Levine.
Levine? Mr.
Yes.
Levine, my apologies. If you're here for Mr. Levine, please acknowledge the presence. Louis Auerbach. Thank you. Francine. Susan Hoover.
Sir.
Linda Thomas.
Here.
Philip Chastain. I don't see Philip Chastain.
He's not been let
He was
yet,
already
sir.
called.
Yeah,
Was
he was already
on the other list, was he not? Okay. So that makes 1, 2, 3, 4 extra minutes for a total of 7.
Mr. Chairman, members of the City Council, and my fellow neighbors, my name is Dennis Levine. I am a Tampa native and a member of the Florida Bar. For almost 17 years, my wife Francine and I have owned property located at 2902 Coachman, located directly behind the Stovall House. Our house has a large backyard that abuts the Stovall House property. My wife and I currently rent out this house. We live in Bayshore Beautiful, but we plan to build our next home on this property. To us, this is a very big deal. As owners of one of only 5 houses directly next to the Stovall House, we are one of the neighbors who will be most directly and adversely impacted by this plan. We strongly oppose the PD rezoning application and the alcohol application. Now, I don't doubt Mr. Casper's sincerity. Like myself, he's a graduate of Jesuit High School, and I give him the benefit of that doubt. But as I told him, this is a great concept. It's just in the wrong place. When the people who started the Outback wanted to have a private club and golf course, they went out to the outskirts of Tampa, bought a very large parcel of property, and built a golf course there. That's not what's happening here. This application calls for a private recreational facility, but no matter what you call it, make no mistake. If approved, this proposal will create property with 80 parking spaces, a commercial kitchen, and other non-residential uses next door to our house in a completely residential neighborhood. I want to highlight for the City Council some of the specific negative impacts this proposed commercial use would have on our house. Let's start with noise. There would be hundreds of people on the property at any one time. Could be hundreds. The proposed rezoning, if approved, includes 80 parking spaces. More than half of these parking spaces are on the western boundary of the Casper's property and right next to our house. Imagine beeping keys, slamming doors, as 40 cars start their engines following the conclusion of an event while you and your children are trying to sleep. Clearly, the quiet ambiance at our house will be significantly negatively affected by more noise from this proposed use. Now, should Mr. Casper's proposal be approved, no one can deny that traffic will significantly increase in this area, and we'll use our narrow streets. To reach the club, no doubt much of the traffic, including commercial service trucks, will turn east off McDill Avenue and use Coachman, our street, Aileen or Asbury. Then turn onto Richards Court, go east on Coachman to reach Bayshore Boulevard, then turn right to reach the club's entrance. In the evening, cars and trucks which turn onto Richards Court to go to Bayshore will be shining their lights directly into our house. Talk about odor. The proposed PD places commercial trash dumpsters about 100 feet from our house. These dumpsters in the proposed commercial dining operation will necessarily emit odors that are not there now. The dumpsters likely will attract vermin. These odors are not what anyone wants coming from the house next door. The PD violates the city parking setback requirements. The PD site plan specifically states that with respect to a recreational facility private, quote, no parking or loading areas or mechanical equipment shall be located within 25 feet of any adjoining property which is in a residential district. Contrary to the petitioner's position, the setback shown on Mr. Casper's PD regarding parking along their western boundary line between our house and their house would violate the applicable city code. Let me explain. 20 of the proposed parking spaces on the west side of the Casper property are only 5 feet from the west property line, not 25 feet. Now, there's a 20-foot strip of land with an easement between our house and the Casper's property. The proposed PD apparently counts the easements 20 feet, plus the 5 feet from the Casper's property line to the parking spaces to get the required 25 feet setback for the parking. This is not sufficient setback under the city code, and they have not asked for a waiver of this requirement. This easement strip is by definition an adjoining property which is in a residential district, and the proposed parking is only 5 feet away, not 25 feet. Speaking of the 20-foot city-owned strip of land and easement between our house and the Casper's property, I want to share with you an experience that we had before this city council. About 12 years ago, my wife and I filed an application to vacate that easement. The easement contains a drainage ditch. We agreed to make no changes to the drainage ditch. City staff had no objection. But an attorney for Mr. Teasley and 2 neighbors came to city council and complained. They argued that vacating this parcel would adversely impact drainage in the area, which was not true at all, since we had made the agreement not to build anything on that easement. Nevertheless, because 3 people showed up and objected, the city council denied our application for what was really a minor change, which would have had 0 impact on the neighborhood. Speaking of drainage, if the Casper's proposed development goes forward, the pond on their property will be filled in. There will be significantly more impervious ground on that property with all the building and the parking. This clearly will have an adverse impact on stormwater drainage in an area which, as you know, traditionally has had significant flooding problems, and which this city council helped to remedy by putting in a pump station in the neighborhood. After denying our minor request 12 years ago based on the opposition of 3 people, it would be incredibly hypocritical if the city council were now to approve this rezoning and this liquor license, which would result in a significant and unprecedented commercial use of the property next door to our house, and which will adversely impact our house and the entire neighborhood. I'm certain none of you would want that next to your home. The proposal is not compatible with our neighborhood and is not consistent with residential zoning. You should deny this application. Thank you. I would like to place these in the record. And I might add the 25-foot setback is specifically on their PD.
Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Dietz.
If you can,
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Ms. Dietz, just give me an
Oh, sure,
opportunity
sorry.
to acknowledge John McLaughlin. John McLaughlin, did you previously speak? Okay, let me once again please state that if you speak or have previously given up time on somebody's sheet, please remove your name because, and by the way, I'm getting multiple sheets. It is very time consuming and very difficult. Some of them are crossed out and some of them have double check marks next to it. It's very confusing for me to be able to do this. So I'm going to ask you to please don't put us in the position of having to find out and having counsel to be able to say that person already spoke, because as the day goes on, the sheets get longer and it's harder for me to look back. So please, if you'd cooperate, I would really much appreciate it. Rick Chambers. Is Rick Chambers here? I don't see Rick Chambers. Robin Medulla. I don't see Robin Medulla. Susan Boyd. Thank you. Martin Paterno. Thank you. Susan Lane. Thank you. Lynn Ninnis. Thank you. Jack Ninnis. I don't see Jack Minnis. Kathy Chambers. I don't see Kathy Chambers. Dave Reed. I don't see Dave Reed. The other name was John McLaughlin. We're striking. Robert Batson. Thank you. That's number 5. Mel Ross. I'm striking that one. Linda Reed. Okay, that's number 6. Heidi Paterno. That's number 7. A total of 10 minutes.
Thank you. Council members, my name is Jennifer Dietz. I have been sworn in. I'm a member of the Florida Bar, and I'm also a professor of law. The reason I'm here today is because I live 2 houses from the Stovall project, the proposed Stovall project. My husband and daughter and I have lived there for 26 years. We live at 2904 West Coachman Avenue. And as you can see, this is the wall to the Stovall, and this is my house right here with the X. The gentleman who just spoke lives on the other side of me. Mr. Levine and I have a very good friendship, and we are both opposed to the project, basically because it infringes upon our quiet enjoyment of our street. Excuse the glasses. Dear council members, my husband and I are long-term residents of Bayshore Beautiful. We bought our house before we had our daughter, and we implore you to consider the detrimental factors that will occur should the developer's proposed changes to the Stovall house be approved. When we looked at the Stovall house application, presentations by the Stovall house folks, and I have to applaud them for their great presentation. They put up pictures of houses that, let me demonstrate. They showed houses which were very grand, very lovely, but they didn't go down Coachman. Now, if you look carefully, Coachman is right here. And if you go down Coachman, you're not going to find grandiose houses. You're going to find houses anywhere from $400,000 to $600,000, not the large houses that were shown before. And I think that was done purposefully to demonstrate that these large homes not only are for the Stovall project, but also these large homes contain people who can afford to be members of the Stovall project. Now, my husband and I cannot afford to become members of the Stovall project, but we have to. Should this pass, we will be constrained by the trash, the noise, the trucks, the smells, the sounds, and the lights. That doesn't sound like much, but when the cars come around the corner on Coachman onto Richards Court, which is a very small street, the lights shine into the Levine's bedrooms and into my bedrooms in my house, only 2 of the bedrooms in my house. And I'm asking that this be taken into consideration because I do have a child at home, and my husband and I do sleep in the other bedroom. With regard to the Stovall house, as one of the oldest homes on Bayshore Boulevard, since 1909, this house has been preserved. And I had the great fortune of meeting Harry Teasley and him telling me about how he preserved the house and wanted it to stay preserved. I do not consider adding 12,500 square feet preserving the house. I know that there's foundational problems with the Stovall house itself and that it does need to be protected. But one of the other issues that has come up has been the zoning of the project. What I have looked into is the zoning of a general business. So this isn't exactly the same, but it's residential to zoning. And it's in Miami, Florida. It was in 2006, and the court reversed, saying that it would be inconsistent with the scale with the established neighborhood land use pattern. And I was really struck by those words, the land use pattern that's already been established in that area. The law will not and cannot approve a zoning regulation or any governmental action adversely affecting the rights of others, which is based on no more than the fact that those who support it have the power to work their will. The people down at the end of Coachman, which will become a gateway for the Stovall House, we don't have the power that the people in the big houses have, that the people with the money have. We're simple folks that live in simple homes, and we're just asking to have the same consideration regarding the trash pickup and the noise and the garbage disposal and things like that, that others are given when they're shown the bigger houses. In addition, the court held that, in the same case, based on the evidence, it is clear that the changed zoning does not comply with the established zoning laws nor the vision plan. And I argue that the Vision 2040 for the public welfare and safety of the residential neighborhoods is most important to our grand plan for Tampa. And that's why we moved here all those years ago. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. My name is Joe Kirkner. My family and I have lived at 2919 West Coachman Avenue since 1965. In over 50 years, I've seen many changes to South Tampa, but few, if any, to the neighborhood and the good people who call it home. My point being that the true experts on this project's consistency with the neighborhood are the longtime residents, such as myself, who are here to testify tonight. The Stovall property used to be called the Lee Mansion when I was a kid, and we would play until Mrs. Lee would come outside, yell at us, or fire buckshot into the air, and then we would scurry away. Once the property was obtained by the next owner, the fence was built, the plants and the trees went up, and the gate was installed. That was decades ago. The property is neither accessible nor visible now, unless you have a multi-million-dollar paycheck or you're the gardener. So it being an asset to the community is a falsehood. It may be an asset to the new owners, Stovall House LLC, a corporation, not a neighbor. Neighbors watch out for each other. They mow your lawn when you're on vacation, they keep an eye on each other's kids, and they make sure they're safe. They have you over on the 4th of July. Corporations exist to do one thing, and that is to make money. In the 50-plus years my family and I have lived on Coachman Avenue, there's never been a restaurant in any home, not a bar selling alcohol, not a hotel, not a wedding venue, no Stovall House LLCs, just moms, dads, their kids, and the neighbors. Stovall House LLC has run a slick marketing and propaganda campaign to convince people it is here to save the day and save the Stovall from the high-rise boogeyman. Stovall is not in danger. It is simply a building owned by a corporation, not a person. It's not a way of life or a part of the neighborhood. The real danger is the addition of hundreds of vehicles onto Coachman Avenue, Aileen, Bayshore, and other streets. The addition of more intoxicated adults driving in South Tampa, overflow parking on our narrow streets, and mob scenes at the property when Bayshore is closed for special events such as Gasparilla. The question is, who does the city ultimately serve? The citizens who create neighborhoods, its families who pay the bulk of taxes to support Tampa, or a make-believe entity called Stovall House LLC? Remember, you're not granting special privilege to a person, but to the property the LLC currently owns. Any promises made by the LLC do not have to be kept by them or by the next owner. I urge you to vote no on this. It is not consistent with the neighborhood. It is a Pandora's box, and I think you will regret voting yes on it. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Hello. I have been sworn in. Okay. Good evening, City Council, Chairman Reddick. My name is Sarah Jennings Kumagai. I live at 2918 West Coachman Ave. That's 6 houses from this Stovall Lee house. My husband and I purchased our home in 2010. We also own a condo at the Pinnacle, and we chose to remain close to the Pinnacle on Coachman Ave because we like the quiet residential nature of our neighborhood. Look at the site plans. They speak for themselves. This development is commercial, not residential. I do not want a 17,000 square foot structure with an 80-car parking lot on Bayshore at the end of our street. I would like to read a letter from Connie Abate, who could not be here tonight. She lives on Davis Island, and she is also opposed to the Stovall project. Dear City Council, as an active participant in the Coalition for Road Safety, a collaborative of many Safe Streets advocacy groups, and an advocate of Vision Zero, I would like to voice opposition to the Stovall project. The Stovall project is counter to Vision Zero and Complete Street resolutions passed by City Council and creates an environment that endangers pedestrians and bicyclists. It will send more impaired drivers onto Bayshore and surrounding neighborhood streets. This is counter to providing pedestrian and bicyclist safety, as set by Vision Zero and the Complete Streets resolutions. We have reached out to MAD, and they are also a part of the coalition. The Stovall project also intends to use Bayshore Boulevard as an access street for their commercial service trucks. This is in direct violation of the law and promotes additional commercial service trucks to do the same. This increases the probability for pedestrian and bicyclist crashes and fatalities on Bayshore. The service trucks and the 80-plus guest vehicles entering and exiting Stovall 7 days a week will also impede the safe passage of bicyclists on Bayshore, as they frequently will be crossing the Bayshore bicycle lanes under the Complete Streets resolution. It creates an environment of contradicting the Vision Zero resolution. I understand that an impact study has not been conducted to measure the impact of the Stovall project on pedestrians and bicyclists. Yet, it has been a policy of the city to study everything. If the council is to uphold Vision Zero and the Complete Streets resolutions, it should be expected that an impact study would be mandatory. I would like to close by imploring you to keep our neighborhood residential and vote no for the PD zoning and the alcohol zoning. My husband and I live in a historic home. We live in a historic home as well. Madeline McCormick, the widow of General Tinker, lived there from 1941 until she died in the home in 2000. We plan to live in our historic home as a home. Thank you for your time, and please vote no for the zoning changes.
Hi, good evening. I have been sworn in. My name is Jennifer Copeland. I live at 2937 West Bayshore Court in a property that, on a street that is adjacent to this property. And I want to show you a picture that I took last Friday of a situation that occurs quite often in our neighborhood. So I had turned off of Bayshore Boulevard to go down my street, Bayshore Court, and here I am stuck, cars on either side. I couldn't go forward because there's not enough room there to get through, and then traffic had already piled up behind me. So it's a hard situation to try and navigate then going in someone's driveway, backing up, and then there's no two-way to get out. So I was literally stuck there until someone else could back up. So my biggest concern here is increased traffic on our street. This is not just a one-time occurrence. This is something that happens quite frequently. This time it was a construction truck, but it isn't always. There have been several times when it was just 2 regular vehicles who may not have realized just how narrow our street was and parked where they didn't realize cars couldn't get through. And I'm showing this to demonstrate that we cannot handle any more traffic or potential outsider parking in our very narrow street. This is not merely an inconvenience to those of us who live here, but I consider it also a safety hazard. It would be impossible for emergency vehicles to get someone in need in a timely manner should parking like this happen when an emergency arises. An 18,000 square foot venue as proposed by the developer will undoubtedly cause an increase in traffic, not only from members and staff, but as also delivery trucks. Even if there is a rule in place that members and staff cannot use our side streets as they enter and exit the club or for parking, I just don't see how this possibly can be enforced. Furthermore, if you grant Mr. Casper his alcohol variance, you will add potentially impaired drivers into the mix. This is a danger to all those who live around the property as well as those who enjoy Bayshore Boulevard. I'm the mother of 2 teenage sons. One is a new driver and one will be getting his learner's permit next month. They are young drivers and their safety is my #1 priority. Adding more traffic and possibly a venue where alcohol will be sold and served this close to my home is just not acceptable. When my husband and I moved to South Tampa 6 years ago, we chose the location of our home because it was one of the only pure residential neighborhoods left in the area. We did not want the extra noise and traffic that comes with living near commercial establishments or even the other social clubs in our area. We strongly oppose the rezoning of the Stovall House from residential to PD, and we strongly oppose the special use waiver to allow the developer to sell and serve alcohol within 50 feet of our homes. Thank you.
For Ms. Morgan, Emma I can't read it, Solon?
Yes.
Thank you. One additional minute, please.
My name is Hillary Morgan. I live at 2905 West Coachman Avenue, as shown on the map right here. It's highlighted in pink. We are 3 houses from the Stovall project. I am not a former mayor. I didn't start a baseball team in this town. I don't own a car dealership. But I'm a careful reader, and I live close to the Stovall, and I care. And this PD application has a lot of problems. I get paid all day to practice law and litigate here, and critical reading is what I do. And I'm really concerned about some of the things that have been overlooked here and haven't been addressed. The applicant's proposed use of the Stovall House, A, threatens the public health, safety, and welfare. B, is not compatible with the adjacent existing land uses. And C, it risks establishing a precedent or encourages more intensive or incompatible uses in the surrounding area. This campaign to save the Stovall wants you to save it at the same time as paving it. Saving is not paving. That's plain and simple. There's no historic designation that includes paving a parking lot to add 80 parking spaces. The proposed use is unequivocally a commercial operation. I was at a construction event last night and talked to some of my commercial contracting friends. They've all bid on this job. They've bid on it to do the commercial grade grease trap. They've bid on it to do the MEP for the commercial structure. They've bid on it to do the commercial fire alarm, because this project has to comply with the Florida Building Code's commercial fire life safety requirements under the building code. That's under the commercial code. The residential code is a separate code. We have an unequivocally commercial project here. One of the other big concerns I have is the increased truck traffic. Even if, as the applicant intends, and nobody doubts they are the best of intentions, the concern is, are they enforceable, and will they run with the land? Even if delivery and service vehicles exclusively enter Stovall through the Bayshore gate, which seems unlikely that they would enter with members, there will be an increase in truck traffic on my street, Coachman Avenue, and the surrounding streets, and here's why. The current ordinances do not allow trucks to access Stovall because there are no designated truck routes. Section 25-182 of the ordinance sets that forth. The closest truck route is McDill Avenue. Not even Gandy, between McDill and Bayshore, is a designated truck route. So there's no way for trucks to legally get to the Stovall. They're allowed to deviate, but the rule about deviating is very clear. Anytime a truck, which is defined as a vehicle over 1 ton, which is not that much, anytime they need to deviate and take a non-truck route, they are required to minimize the distance traveled over and along the non-truck route street, and that's under section 25-182E. In order to minimize this distance, then, trucks will actually be required to take Coachman, the pretty brick-lined street with the oaks overhanging and the kids playing. they'll be required to take Coachman, Bayshore Court, Villa Rosa. This is even setting aside the fact that Ubers will take it. There may be some on-street parking. How is that going to be enforceable? But we've got a major problem right here, and I think we all need to really stop and evaluate this. The next problem is the noise nuisance. Obviously, being within 250 feet, we didn't buy a house to be near a commercial venue. We don't want to be near a wedding venue or even a carefully done, only 4 events a year venue. We were 26 when we bought our house. Our friends were buying their homes near South Howard. We chose a small, quiet residential area on purpose, and please don't take that away from us.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is John Murray. I live at 2922 Bayshore Court. I've lived in South Tampa since 2000 in several locations. In 2000, I lived at 2973 Knights Avenue, which backed up to McDill. And it was right at Mad Dogs. You've heard about that mentioned tonight. It was a commercial area. Clearly a, oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I beg your pardon.
Is that for him? Is that for you?
Yes.
The paper that was...
Yes.
Sir, how long you been in here tonight?
Sorry?
How long have you been here tonight?
All night.
And you haven't seen how the process worked?
I did.
So how did you make that error in this mistake?
Sorry?
How did you make that error? By
It
not turning
was just
paper?
in, you know, I
How
came up suddenly.
How many do you have on there? He requested?
On this list? Well, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 uncrossed names. I don't know whether they're all here or not, but there are 6 names.
Okay.
Do a name check.
Name check, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you. Cynthia Murray. Jane Heisey. Jane Heisey, I'm striking that. Harold Tubbs. Dan Garcia. I'm striking that. June Maines. That's 3. And Mitchell Lindsley. That's 4 additional minutes, Mr. Chair.
All right, let me remind this audience that just because you are not speaking and you're giving up your speaking time, I'm also requesting that you leave so these other people can come in here. That means you can go down into the Sister City room and watch the remaining of this hearing, but you are occupying seats that people are trying to get up here to be seated.
And if I can, Mr. Chairman, and not interrupt the speaker, but we're presented with a situation I don't think we've ever been presented with before, where I'm ending up crossing off names. Normally, it's the responsibility of the person getting the speaker waiver form to ensure that those people are present when their names are called and they're up at the lectern. It is adding to the process to have an extensive length of names and not know whether or not they're here.
All right, well, they got a person walking around tracking these names, so it's that person's responsibility to make sure they're here. So, sir, you're going to be granted those 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. And I will assure you that when I had that form filled out, everybody was here, and I simply can't control what happens to them. As I indicated earlier, my name is John Murray. I'm a member of the Florida Bar, have been sworn in, and I live at 2922 Bayshore Court. In 2000, as I was saying, I lived on McDill, adjacent to commercial properties. I knew what the character of the property there was. I knew what it was like, and I made a conscious decision to reside in that area. Didn't last very long. I chose later to move to Bayshore Court, where I have lived since 2004. I've lived there for nearly 15 years. When I moved there, the expectation of my wife and me was that we would live in a tranquil neighborhood that would remain so. And this hearing today, this process here is changing everything. The area was unfettered by traffic, and we're now faced with a commercial entity being put directly at the foot of our street. So I rise in strong opposition to Mr. Casper's application. Don't know Mr. Casper, don't work for him, and I just know that this is a very, very bad idea. There have been numerous points made by the speakers here in opposition to this proposal, and I adopt all of them. I think that the fact that this is a commercial venture, a commercial entity that's being sought, it can't be denied. I mean, you can slather as much lipstick as you want on that pig, and it's still going to be a pig. You heard Ms. Morgan just before me talk about the fact that there are commercial grease traps, there are commercial considerations that go into this project. There's nothing residential about it, no matter how you look at it. And it's going to impose that commercial indignity on the neighborhood that we live in. And it is inconsistent with the zoning and transportation in this area. I'm going to talk about the transportation in just a minute. And more importantly, it's inconsistent with TAPA's 2040 comprehensive plan. This sort of commercial entity is not envisioned by that plan, and it should not be allowed to exist. The thing that's, I guess, the most concerning to me is the fact that the notion of what's going on here is that the process means that you're taking resources from a large number of people that live in the area, and a lot of people, quite frankly, that don't live in the area. But you've seen representations, 1,000 or so people live here, the tremendous number of people that are against this. You're taking the resources from them, whether it's property values, and it's almost unquestionable that property values are going to decrease to some extent. The traffic, you've heard people talk about the traffic, the problems that are there. Believe me, living on Bayshore Court for 15 years, at least one day a week, I've got problems driving down my street to get to my office. The service vehicles are already a problem. Parking is a tremendous problem. I'm going to talk about the parking in just a moment. The tranquility of the area, the net result of what you're doing is taking all of that tranquility, all of the resources that we have, and giving them to one person. And quite frankly, that's just not right. There's been a lot of talk today about the personality of Mr. Casper, what a good guy he is. This is not a plebiscite, or it's not a referendum on Mr. Casper. And somebody pointed out very correctly that Stovall House LLC owns this property. That's the entity that we're dealing with. It doesn't go to Mr. Casper. The zoning stays with this property. So whatever you do is going to stay with the property. Mr. Casper, I'm going to stop short of using the word hypocritical, but I will talk about some inconsistencies. Mr. Casper, back in 2015, as you are all aware, very much opposed the Grand Central Avenue rezoning near the Oxford Exchange. The Tampa Bay Business Journal on July the 7th, 2015, quoted Mr. Casper as saying, "We invested a tremendous amount of capital in that neighborhood with the understanding that zoning be adhered to." Bingo. That's exactly what's the situation of everybody that lives in our neighborhood. Same publication on August the 27th quoted Mr. Casper, "We're just asking the city to uphold the current zoning. That's all we want you to do, is to uphold the current zoning, and we're asking you to do that." Mr. Casper has made a lot of promises, quite frankly, promises that he is not able to keep. Ms. Morgan, just before me, talked about the fact that he made a pledge. Well, trucks are not going to use your local streets. Under the code, as it exists now, they're required to use the local streets. They can't go down Bayshore. They can't come down Gandy. The only way they can get to the Stovall facility is to use our local streets. He said that one of the things on his website said that on-street parking by members and guests will be prohibited with towing enforced. I don't know if you're planning on giving Mr. Casper the authority to tow cars that are parked legally on the street, or whether he's going to be towing my car, but that notion that those cars will be towed is quite frankly laughable. There are a lot of promises that have been made here that are not able to be kept with respect to this property. One quick thing that I will show you that I've noticed since I run on that area almost every day. There. That's the sidewalk that's just been placed in front of Mr. Casper's property there on Bayshore. And you notice the lack of a swale area there. There's nothing between the sidewalk and the street as the code requires it to be. The transportation report of January 31st, 2018 said there needs to be a 2.5-foot minimum green space recovery between the sidewalks and the edge of the pavement. It's not there. The rules are being violated already. Now, the notion that this is not going to be a precedent is quite frankly nonsense. One of the things about zoning is that you look and see what's around. This is a cancer. If you plant this cancer, it's going to grow. I lived in Dade County for a lot of years, and I saw Brickell Avenue go from a magnificent Bayshore Boulevard place to a disaster. You're going to make Bayshore a disaster, and I ask that you not double-cross the people that live in Tampa by voting for this. Thank you.
All right, next speaker.
Good evening. Thank you for your patience this evening. I have not been sworn, so perhaps you'd like to swear me?
All right, anyone else plan on speaking and have not been sworn, please stand.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Louis Conti. I'm also a member of the Florida Bar and live on Bayshore Boulevard, 2 blocks from the Stovall Project property. My wife and I, who's here with me, also a lawyer, were surprised when we saw the Stovall property petition. We thought it was clearly inconsistent with the residential area, and we thought it would get no traction. Surprise, they have done a very good job of selling the package. Save the Stovall, of course, is nothing but a slick moniker for destroy the Stovall, in my view. If you want to save the Stovall, you will leave the Stovall exactly as it exists, which is a single-family residence of substantial beauty and substance on Bayshore Boulevard. I'm here not to reiterate a lot of the points that have already been made. Some of the speakers before me have done an excellent job in discussing the technical problems with this project. I do, however, want to specify a specific focus on precedent. I think it would be a grave injustice for this council to determine that this commercial project is somehow different from other commercial projects which are sure to follow if you approve the application for this project. I think it does a disservice not only to the residents who are immediately and rather dramatically adversely impacted by the project. It's a disservice to Bayshore Boulevard and all of the linear park aspects of the boulevard, because I'm already seeing trucks coming down Bayshore, even though they're prohibited, knocking the branches off the oak trees in front of our property because the trees are growing out over Bayshore, and the size of the trucks that are coming down Bayshore are continuing to get bigger. They know they're not supposed to be there, but if it's a shortcut down to Gandy, which it is, they'll take the chance that they won't get ticketed. Can you imagine the number of trucks that are going to come off? My time is up. I will ask you please to consider the precedent you will be setting this evening or whenever you decide this decision, and understand the potential impact on the future development of South Tampa and Bayshore Boulevard. Thank you for your attention.
Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Isabel DeLise. I'm 16 years old, and I live on 2921 West Bayshore Court. I am here tonight to express my opposition to the proposed zoning changes at the Stovall House. As a young but active member of the Bayshore Beautiful community, I urge you to reject this proposal. Here are my reasons why. 1. I, like many others my age, have grown up and lived here all our lives. From learning to ride our bike to now being a new driver on the same streets, this proposal jeopardizes the safety and family-centered environment of our neighborhood. One of the most interesting facts I've learned is that most car accidents occur 1 mile within our home. The proposed Silver project is 1 block from my house. You may ask, why does this matter? It matters because of dangerous traffic and drunk drivers. As a new driver, I'm already nervous about driving, especially at night and on Bayshore Boulevard. I'm concerned that the proposed Silver project will not only increase unnecessary, dangerous, daily traffic in my peaceful neighborhood, but that will also greatly increase the chances of DUI accidents in my neighborhood as well. There are many young drivers in my neighborhood. It is overall a single family home residential neighborhood and not meant to hold or accommodate parties and potential drunk drivers. Secondly, I'm a babysitter. One of the most important attributes of a single-family residential neighborhood is its family friendliness. Sidewalks, slower traffic, less commercial traffic, playgrounds, and peacefulness are all attributes that make up the neighborhood of Bayshore Beautiful. I babysit children from all ages, play outside, and enjoy Bayshore Beautiful along with them. The proposed Silver project will greatly disrupt our neighborhood and my ability to enjoy those things with those I babysit. As a lifelong member of the Bayshore Beautiful neighborhood, I urge you to think long and hard about the proposal before you. Think about the impacts it will bring: increased traffic on neighborhood streets, increased potential for deadly DUI accidents on Bayshore Boulevard and our neighborhood streets, increased noise, commercial traffic, and potential for harm to our neighborhood children, and permanently alter my neighborhood, my home and place of security and peace, Bayshore Court. Once again, I'm opposed to this proposal. Please do your part to protect our neighborhood and vote no. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Wheat. My wife and I live at 3112 Westfielder Street, about 1,500 feet from the Stovall House. I speak today in opposition to the rezoning and the AB application. My wife joins me in that. I'm also a member of the Florida Bar and the Georgia Bar, and so I guess I represent myself tonight, so I hope you'll forgive the lack of judgment in that respect. In my earlier life, when I had hair, when I was a young lawyer, I acted like I was a land use and zoning lawyer primarily in the Atlanta area. So I can tell you, based on my experience doing that, and it bears repeating, this is a commercial use. It's a commercial use. It's a commercial use. Now, why is it a commercial use? You have an event center, transient lodging units, also known as hotel rooms, a request for the ability to sell alcohol, not just give it away, the stated intention to charge guests for eating, sleeping, drinking, and partying. That's a hotel. Let's call it what it is. So when you look at it as a hotel, or with the B&B as a principal use versus an accessory use, which is another way to look at it, also accurate, what you have is a commercial use that can only be developed under either the CG or the CI rezoning. I thought it was telling that Mr. Gardner, in his presentation, came up, and when he was talking about the project, he said, loosely defined, this is a private recreational facility. Well, loosely defined is the issue, and that's what the council today has to wade through and figure out. And I would respectfully submit that what we're dealing with is simply a commercial development. And in my time as a land use and zoning lawyer, I got to tell you, I have never seen a commercial use airdropped into the middle of residential like we have here. So otherwise, I would just second what Mr. Murray and Mr. Morgan and Ms. Morgan and the other lawyers talked about today regarding the legal side of this. The transportation is also key, because the only way delivery trucks can get in and out consistent with the code is on the local streets. My street fielder can't handle that. If you go down Bayshore, which is the only alternative, it's not a designated truck route. They have to get all the way from Bayshore at Coachman to Gandy, and then to Gandy at McDill before they can actually hit a designated truck route. And lastly, I would just say I'm flabbergasted that the council would even consider approving something that would increase the traffic on Bayshore, given recent events. Keep Bayshore beautiful and safe. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Obeck, and I live with my wife and 3 children at 2909 Bayshore Court. I also own a residence next door at 2907 Bayshore Court, which I lease to a young family with 2 young children. Both residences are immediate neighbors of the Stovall house, as you can see in the projected image. My family supports both applications before you, submitted by Mr. Casper. In addition, my tenant at 2907 supports both applications. I have lived in South Tampa for 32 years and on Bayshore Court for 21 of those years. I love the neighborhood, and I have no plans to ever move. I don't believe the Stovall House project will have any negative impact on the safety of my family or our peaceful enjoyment of our neighborhood. I'm a regional president for a $30 billion Southeastern Regional Bank that has extended hundreds of millions of dollars of loans on residences around Tampa Bay. I have a very good understanding of property values and the various impacts on property values. I believe strongly that the Stovall House project will enhance my neighborhood and our entire community and only help improve property values. When I first started hearing about Mr. Casper's plan for the Stovall House earlier this year, it was from neighbors who were intent on creating fear and seemed to be rushing to judgment without a proper set of facts. Instead of blindly believing the rumor mill, I decided to quietly and privately do my own homework. I gathered facts that were published by Mr. Casper. I gathered some of my own facts. Then I consulted a very prominent local land use attorney. I then asked Mr. Casper to meet with me to discuss the project and show me his specific plans. He was extremely professional and spent plenty of time one-on-one with me to help me understand his vision and the care he was taking to be a good neighbor. He answered all of my questions and even asked me for suggestions on what would make the project more appealing to the neighborhood. Based on the legal advice I received from my professional knowledge, I asked Mr. Casper to make a few accommodations regarding the project plans, all of which he complied with without hesitation. My wife has known Mr. Casper and his family since childhood and holds them in high regard. Since moving to Tampa in 1986, I have seen Mr. Casper and his family do wonderful things in our community. Based on his track record of developing quality projects in our community, I am confident that he will do the same with the Stovall House and that it will have a positive impact on my neighborhood and our entire community. I encourage you to approve both applications. Thank you for your time.
Those ones who are extracted are the ones who are here.
I don't see Dennis Smith. Ethan Campbell. Jane Kowalski. Thank you. And Sandy Gomo. Okay. And that's a total of 5 speakers. 8 minutes, please.
We have one more. Denise Savage.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Her name is on the list?
What is the name?
Denise Savage.
Denise Savin.
I failed to extract it from the jury list. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
Didn't.
Denise Savit is on this list.
No, Mr. Chairman, let's
Yes.
move forward.
Yes.
Pardon?
We ain't gonna correct mistakes tonight. Move
Thank you
forward.
very much, Mr. Reddick,
Let's go.
and Mr. Chairman. Good evening, honorable council members, and thank you for being here. I'm Jenny Nichols. I live on 2903. This is my house. This is my neighbor's house, whose husband is too sick to be here and represent our cause as well. But of course, I will be speaking on my own behalf. Please forgive me my poor English and horrible Russian accent. I am not a spy. I'm just an immigrant who 30 years ago had to leave oppressive Soviet system, fearing for my life, escaping the authorities who were frightening the life of my own and my daughter just because I freely, openly spoke against them. So, standing in front of you today, I truly and deeply appreciate the right that this country gave me to speak openly, and opportunity that you gave me to express my feelings, my concerns, and my grievance here. And grievance I have, Honorable Councilman. For the last 9 months, since I learned about Casper's application for his private recreational facility on my backyard, literally on my backyard, I lost my sleep, I lost my peace of mind, I lived in anxiety and fear. I wondered what would happen to me and my family with 80 parking lots lined along my fence line. How would we cope with all the lights and smells and sounds coming from flowing into my bedroom window, which is 60 feet away from the property, in the late evenings and even early morning hours? I wondered how my already packed with cars little Bayshore Court block can handle any more increase of the traffic. I was wondering about the safety of my daughter. She's a teenager and she's about to drive. How will she be able to maneuver this already dangerous intersection on Bayshore Boulevard and Bayshore Court with all the traffic coming out of the property, having to U-turn, cross and pass, and how many of these people will be alcohol impaired? I wondered, and then I decided I'm going to go around the neighborhood. I'm going to knock at the doors. I'm going to ask the questions. I want to know if I am wrong. And here is what I learned. Mr. Councilman, I'm sorry, Honorable Councilman and Honorable Chairman, here is what I learned. The majority of people in the adjacent streets, in the impact streets, were absolutely against this project. They didn't just were against, they wanted to do something about it. So we formed an organization. We called it Keep Bayshore Beautiful and Our Children Safe. We were grassroots organization. We didn't have money. Everything we did was a volunteer work. We built our website and formed a Facebook group. We designed and printed our T-shirts and signs, made and distributed the flyers with the factual information about Stovall. We took these facts from Mr. Casper's very own application that you, thanks to you, made it available for us online. All we did, we extracted the small prints and made them bigger, and then we put it on our flyers. They did not look pretty because they were made on our home computers, and we didn't have money to pay for glossy cards. We didn't have money to pay for huge ads in newspapers, for elaborate articles in the press. We did not have thousands of dollars to hire the PR system that Mr. Casper obviously did. And yes, we wanted to be heard by Tampa. We wanted Tampa to know what are we about. On many occasions, we tried to reach out to press. And no matter how much we tried, we felt we were either ignored or muffled or even ridiculed. Casper's supporters called us a bunch of terrorists, cult members, herd of under-traveled, uneducated hicks, and other names I would not dare to use in your presence. And some of these words were actually quoted in the press. And yet, in spite of all this, in spite of trying to drag our name through the dirt and trying to ridicule us, the numbers of our opposition grew exponentially. The facts and numbers do not lie. You have seen the map that Andy Anders presented to you at the beginning. And we actually built this map from going from door to door and asking people how they feel about that. Yes, there are some white blanks on this map, but these people gave us 3 absolutely different reasons for why they chose not to oppose Stovall. 1, they had business relationship, or they were friends with Mr. Casper. Most of them were on Villa Rosa, because where Mr. Casper used to live, and where his most business connections are. The second one, they thought the proposal was so ridiculous that you, honorable councilman, would never in the right mind approve something like that. So we don't have to bother. We don't have to interfere. And the third group told me that Mr. Casper, Blake Casper, gets what Blake Casper wants. Caspers are a very powerful, influential family, they told me. They have CD in their pocket. They told me that too. And they said, who do you think you are? They said, done deal. You should not even bother. That made me feel straight back to in USSR, insignificant, undetermined, powerless. I had to remind myself, though, that I am in America, and I kept asking these people more questions. And guess what I learned? In spite of the diapason of different opinions, what united these people is one strong feeling: the fear of high-rise. I was wondering where it was coming from. They kept saying, better than high-rise, better than high-rise, better than high-rise. It looked like they felt like they were only given two options to choose from: Stovall or high-rise. Two poisons to take: Stovall or high-rise. And I was saying, no, 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 our zoning doesn't allow for high-rise. The density of our neighborhood, the residential status of our neighborhood does not allow for high-rise. CD does not told us that there is a moratorium on high-rise in our area. CD said we won't have any high-rises. And I believe them. They said, oh yeah? This is what CD said. Watch this councilman lady. They say one thing to us, and then they turn around and they give the developer everything he wants. No high-rises? How about this one on a B2B? They promised us not to have that one, and they gave it anyway. This is what they told me, honorable councilman. I choose not to believe them. I did not believe them. I did not believe that you would take away something that is vitally essential to us: our safety, our serenity of our neighborhood, our rights to peaceful enjoyment of our properties, to give an elite group a place to be entertained. Do we really need to be sacrificed to save Stovall? Destroying our residential neighborhood, turning Stovall into the bar, demolishing beautiful existing structures, implementing 18,000 square feet of dining and entertainment facilities. Would you want to have a alcohol service area larger, 10,000 feet larger than the football field on your backyards? Ask yourself this question. And I hope you're going to make the right decision, because I'm here, because I believe in America, and I believe in you.
Hi, my name is Suzanne Oaks Brownstein, and I'm a neighbor at 2917 Bayshore Court, which is on this map. I'm just a few houses down from the Stovall project. My husband and I and our two young children have lived on the street for more than 5 years. We spend a lot of time walking and biking and riding scooters on the sidewalks of our neighborhood. And because we have such young children, we stop and we look at everything and every tree and every lawn. And so we really see the Stovall and its property as a natural extension of our own beautiful streets. And its grounds and grass and trees are extensions of our own yards. And we definitely see that its presence really seamlessly preserves the feeling of our neighborhood and what we enjoy every day with our young family. And one of the best things about our street is that when we go out into the driveway, when we're leaving for school early in the morning, is when we look east, we see this sunrise. And we don't see a tall building, which absolutely could have happened at that place. And so our concern is that a tall building could have happened to the property in the absence of the Stovall project. The land on the property, is 2.6 acres, which is about 113,000 square feet. And according to code, the property could yield approximately 40,000 square feet of new construction. But Blake Casper's project is not even coming close to that number. The existing home is approximately 5,000 square feet, and as you've heard, his proposed new construction is about 13,000 square feet. That makes for a total of 18,000 square feet, which is less than half of what's permissible under code. Another huge plus for me as a neighbor is that the green space that Blake is not only preserving, but expanding. The percentage of construction or buildings in the lot area is just 16%, 16%. Blake is also planning to restore the front lawn of the home, replacing the pond, which is not original to the neighborhood. He's keeping 80% of the trees on the property while he's required to keep only 50%. So the bottom line for me as a neighbor is that Blake is building less than half of what he could be building under code. He's saving an important, historic, beautiful home that enriches our city, and he's enhancing the grounds and the property, and therefore adding to the beauty, value, and desirability of the neighborhood and our property. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Miller, 2815 West Price Avenue. It occurred to me, one of the disadvantages of being one of the late speakers is everything that I was going to so eloquently to tell you today has already been said. So at least I can be brief. I'm head of the Ballast Point Neighborhood Association, and our concern here is simply Bayshore Boulevard. Ballast Point neighborhood is immediately south of this project. We have about 7,000 residents and about 3,000 households. And Bayshore Boulevard is our lifeline. That's how we get to work, how we get to the interstate, how we get to the crosstown, how we get to the Selman Expressway, how we get to the hospital. And we see it very much as a lifeline. We use it every day. In addition to us, approximately twice a day, this particular area that we're looking at is congested by the traffic from MacDill Air Force Base. So this adds to our concern. And one of the things that I was going to mention, and I'll put this up here, and I guess I can't get it all on there, but I want to emphasize the point that has been made that everyone who comes to this facility on Bayshore Boulevard has to do a U-turn to get there. Everyone, to either get there or leave. If you're coming from the south, you have to come this way, make the turn, make the U-turn, and come into the property this way. From the north, when you leave, you've got to go down here, get in the left lane, and make that turn. The point's been made, I won't belabor it. The project, the project contradicts the Vision Zero and Complete Streets, which the city has embraced. So we're opposed to it for that reason. And the final point is that there have been ineffective missions of problems here and solutions that have been offered. And those solutions are good management. We're going to have rules and regulations. We're going to enforce this. We're going to enforce that. I understand how that could happen with a good family like the Caspers. But keep in mind that this ordinance goes with the land. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know if the Caspers are going to own this property. We simply do not know. So we would propose to you that all promises of good management are not part of what you need to be considering tonight. I appreciate your time.
Good evening. My name is Rodney Kite Howell. My address is 3714 Santiago. The Stovall House has been referred to as historic. A lot of times we use that word historic to mean a lot of things, but having studied the history of the city for over 20 years, I can say without a doubt that the Stovall House and property is indeed historic. Despite its name, and we've actually heard a few mentions of it already this evening, the Stovall house was not originally owned by Mr. Stovall. He came a little bit later, then owned by the Lee family, then the Mendez family, and then by Mr. Teasley, and then, of course, by the Caspers now. The home is indeed, though, quite historic. There were two different bayshores during the early history of this home, and in some ways that's still the case today. North and east of Howard Avenue, which represents, at the time, or in the 50s, the city limits for the city of Tampa, you had Hyde Park. And the homes on Bayshore were situated like they would be in any suburban neighborhood, though, of course, with a better view. South and west of Howard was the county until the mid-1950s. And most of those homes sat on larger lots. By the 50s and 60s, you did see some infill, but not just homes, but also businesses. The Colonnade, which had been on the Bay Shore since the 1930s, was joined by other restaurants, namely Sealy's, Chicken Basket, and Falgi's, and a few others, and of course by the church and the synagogue, the Garden Club and the Women's Club. And so the Bay Shore has always had a bit of a mixed-use nature to it. Also in the 1960s, City Council, in the late 1960s, decided that Bay Shore needed a little sprucing up, and so many lots between DeSoto Avenue and Gandy were converted to allow for condos. And so while this particular lot is not among them, and no offense to you all, I have seen too many times where zoning has changed and the land use has changed to allow for either multifamily on a single family lot, or in this case, potentially multiple single family homes on a very large lot. This is indeed a very large lot, and you could get well over half a dozen homes on this lot without any change in zoning or any public hearing whatsoever. This scenario is actually what happened to another house on the Bay Shore very recently, the A.J. Knight house. And many people don't know the house, although you do probably recognize the house if you remember the brick house just north of Fred Ball Park, now of course the site of a new condominium. The economics of South Tampa just dictate that. The property in South Tampa, and particularly on the Bay Shore, is just far too expensive, and a large lot in the nature of the Stovall property is incredibly, incredibly valuable, not for a single family home anymore. And so adaptive reuse is what's needed for historic preservation, and this is a great example of that adaptive reuse. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to stand in recess for 5 minutes to allow the court reporter and our clerk to have a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Can we go to the court reporter?
Suarez? Here. Cohen? Here. Maniscalco?
Here.
Capine? Miranda?
Here.
Vieira?
Here.
And Reddick.
Here. Thank you, ma'am. You can start.
Good evening. My name is Mary McCann. I live at 2812 North Central Avenue. I am not an attorney, but I am an architectural historian. For over 40 years, I've had the pleasure and the challenge of planning and advocating for the preservation of historic properties. And I think it's important for you to understand this house in the context of the city and the region. When the Stovall Lee House was built in 1909, it was one of the most gracious and important architectural houses in Tampa, as the handouts, which have been entered in my testimony, have entered into the record here, will attest. I am here to speak in favor of this project, both the zoning and the alcohol license. This could be a game changer in Tampa. The lessons and the sensitivity and the vision that Mr. Casper has brought to this project has ramifications that will influence and advance the preservation movement throughout the city, in my opinion. One of the challenges is in preservation, especially with big old white elephant properties, is to come up with a viable and practical use. It has to make sense economically. There are all the considerations for integrating a new and creative use, one that will save a property into the existing community. In my opinion, this project does this in spades. I've been around the block. I've worked in 20 states with 20 different SHPO offices, and I know a good project when I see one. I met Mr. Gasper at a Tampa Preservation meeting, and I was so impressed with what he had to say that day. I want to also emphasize that this project preserves not only the house, which clearly has been altered over time. Let's not kid ourselves. The very graceful first-story veranda has been removed, and that changes the appearance greatly. But we still have the important monumental mass, and perhaps even more significantly on Bay Shore is that we still have the generous grounds. And that is so important to preserve, to convey the historic significance of this property and the value of it to the community. It is also a world-class project that is going to put Tampa and preservation, and frankly, the reputation here isn't particularly good nationally, but this is going to put it on the map. What I would also like to share with you is that the lessons learned here have been taken to other neighborhoods. You have seen this project before. I learned talking to Mr. Blake about ideas that could be used to integrate alcohol establishments into single-family residential neighborhoods like ours here in Tampa Heights. We're an urban village. You only have to be 250 feet from the next establishment. But from working with them and learning their ideas, we were able to work with our owner and get a much better solution to integrate alcohol into our neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration. Please think favorably on the project.
Good evening. My name is Len Scott. I live at 2920 West Bayshore Court, which is the street adjacent to this project. I want to start tonight by applauding this council for your attentiveness and your diligence. This is democracy in action, and I so miss it in our country. And I'm so delighted with the patience that you all have shown and the attention you've shown to this. I live next door to Mr. John Murray and Cindy, my good friends, who are vehemently opposed to this project, and I greatly respect their opinion. I respect everybody's opinion, and I hope they respect mine. I had some very emotional and passionate people come to my door and tell me this project was going to ruin the neighborhood. So much so that I said, yeah, put a sign in my front yard, I'm with you. But then I did what everybody should do. I took my time and I looked at the facts. I looked at the facts. And my decision was, not only is this something that is good for the neighborhood, it's a game changer. And it's a game changer for a very specific reason. It defines the future of our neighborhood, okay, and defines it for the good. I know there's all kinds of zoning laws, but mark my words, if this is not this project, it is going to be a 20-story high-rise. And all the very legitimate concerns that all these people have are going to be times 10. Because the people in those 20 stories, they're not going to follow the rules of a private club. They're not going to have the guidance of a man like Blake Casper, who has committed himself to things like Oxford Exchange and making this a better community. It's going to be a free-for-all. And mark my words about that, because I'm telling you, if you can put a high-rise at Beta Bay and Bayshore, you can put it anywhere. It's not good for the community. You have a man who has a track record for doing great things for the community, and I entrust him and the way he's reached out and said, I want to make this work with all of you, and I want to control traffic patterns, and I want to do this right. And I am so excited about the project, and I encourage everybody to look at the facts. I'm going to say one last thing. I came here 40 years ago to Tampa, and at the time, the Chamber of Commerce had a slogan. It said, America's next great city. And I remember thinking, that would be so cool if it happened. And then I went back to the Northeast for a lot of years, and I came back here 15 years ago. This is the only house I have. I'm not rolling in dough. This is a very big, important investment to me. And I look at this and I go, you know what? This could be America's next great city. Because this kind of vision, the kind of things that Blake wants to bring to this city and other people with vision, can really put Tampa on the map for good. It is high rises that will ruin Bayshore. It is this project that will save Bayshore beautiful. And I give it my wholehearted support. Thank you.
May I ask the legal department a question? Can you put a high rise here?
Rebecca Kurt, legal department. I'm actually going to defer to your planning staff to explain how the comprehensive plan treats this piece of property with that, because I've had discussions with them.
I just want to clear the air.
Okay.
Good evening, council members. David Hay, your planning commission staff. Currently, the site has a residential 10 future land use category. Multifamily of any type is not allowed under that residential 10 future land use category.
All right, gentlemen, good evening. My name is Jackson Morgan. I've lived at 2905 West Coachman Avenue, that one. I've lived at 2905 West Coachman Avenue since military service, brought my wife and me to Tampa in 2010. We chose our current house because it was a good investment at the time, and it was close to the Air Force Base and close to the downtown area. Fast forward to 2017, we both earned a graduate degree, and we weighed options to relocate to Charlotte, Atlanta, Miami. We are the young professionals that Tampa wants to attract and retain. And we recommitted to Tampa because we value and appreciate the character of our neighborhood, the oak-lined streets where neighbors walk dogs and where kids play soccer in their front yards. As in this neighborhood, we know one another. We have a shared interest in preserving what makes our neighborhood special and what keeps us connected and keeps us accountable to one another. Let me be perfectly clear. The proposed commercial operation is inconsistent with the character of our neighborhood, and the services required to sustain that commercial operation are fundamentally inconsistent with our neighborhood. I'm not here to question Mr. Casper's intention for this project. I respect the contributions that both he and Tate have made in our community, and like one of the supporters of this project, my wife and I bring our friends to Oxford Exchange because we think it's a cool place. But we're unconvinced that he or anyone else can manage the unintended consequences of converting a 5,000 square foot home to an 18,000 square foot commercial enterprise. In an effort to assuage my own doubts in November of 2017, I asked one of the developers who's here tonight if he'd be willing to share a plan or some kind of a pro forma to better understand how the business would operate. I was told, I'm sorry, we don't have a business plan. If that's true, that concerns me for myriad reasons and that require no explanation. To answer the question Mr. Casper poses himself in the video, have you seen what they've done over in Tampa? The answer will depend on whether you're part of that limited audience. Mr. Casper, that limited audience is code for what we already know, that this project will exclude the majority of the community in which it will be located. Additionally, services required to sustain this commercial enterprise are fundamentally inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood. The law, as it's been stated earlier, prohibits trucks and service delivery vehicles on arterials and the surface streets nearby. Laws put in place to protect our neighborhoods that would have to be overturned for this project to succeed. Think about that. Laws put in place to protect our neighborhoods would have to be overturned to allow for this operation to succeed. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. I'm Drew Graham. I live at 3122 West Lawn Avenue. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I've lived in Tampa for 23 years now, and I want to talk about one of the themes we've heard tonight, the future of Tampa and how we're perceived by those who are considering making Tampa their home. I am in the venture capital business, have spent 16 years managing a fund here in the Tampa Bay area that invests throughout the Southeast. I spend a lot of time in other cities that you all know that we compete with for talent and for entrepreneurs and for business people who want to start a business in a certain geography and haven't decided where. Raleigh and Charlotte and Nashville and Austin and Texas, and you can name other cities. I spend a lot of time in all of them, and many times I'm trying to recruit entrepreneurs and business people to come to Tampa and be part of our community. And I can tell you that we've made tremendous progress, as you know, over the last 10 years. But I can also tell you that the thing that makes me most excited about this opportunity before us tonight is you simply do not have very many opportunities to have something this special in your community that you can highlight to the rest of the world. And I can tell you that when we have business folks into town, and we had an opportunity, if we did, to drive down Bayshore, which I think is the most beautiful area of Tampa, and go to the Stovall and have a meeting or a dinner or a lunch there, and have them go back to their home community and say, wow, I experienced something special. Tampa's got a lot going. I think that is something we cannot afford to miss in this community because those types of opportunities do not come along very often. We saw one with the Oxford Exchange, and in fact, a few months ago, I was with a gentleman at a hockey game. He'd moved to Tampa a year ago, a senior business fellow with one of the service firms in town, and I said, why did you pick Tampa? And he said, well, you're not going to believe this, but my wife and I really liked the Oxford Exchange. And I sort of said, you got to be kidding me. I said, I love the Oxford Exchange too, but it's not a reason to move to Tampa. He said, well, those are the kinds of things that my wife and I really like to have in a community. And I thought about it and I understood it. So I wouldn't be so dramatic as to say that the Stovall will be the difference between people coming to Tampa or not, but I can tell you that these types of institutions, if we nurture them, if we allow them to take place, when people like Blake Casper are willing to put their name and their dollars and their reputation on the line, it will make a big difference over time. I'll just finish by saying I have had the pleasure of serving with Blake on a couple of nonprofit and civic type boards. He is not only bright, not only committed, he is as honest as the day is long. He is incredibly passionate about this community. I've spent hours talking with him about it. There is not a single question in my mind that if you approve this evening these two proposals, that he will make Tampa proud and he will do things the right way. Thank you for your time and for your service.
Good evening, Councilman. My name is Joe Hanlon, and I live at 701 West Swan Avenue, near the corner of Swan and Bayshore, in the Spanish Town Creek neighborhood. I live in a designated historic preservation area. My wife and I have spent almost $500,000 rehabbing our property while complying with the historic preservation rules, getting all the approvals from the ARC. I speak in favor of this application, and I note the city staff report also. I base my amateur opinion mostly on my view of the Oxford Exchange. This project shows tremendous preservation values and a generous spirit. I trust Blake Casper's taste and his commitment to respectful real estate development. Furthermore, as to the likely members of this proposed high-end private club, no responsible person would want to be a member in a club with a bad reputation, offensive to the neighborhood and to the nearby community. In this respect, Casper has set up some real incentives for really saving the Stovall House for a long time. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Tom Young, 3302 West Mullen Avenue in Tampa. As a fourth-generation Tampa native, I've visited the Stovall House many times over my 46-plus years here and continue to marvel at the home during my weekly runs along the new and improved upland sidewalk there in front of the Stovall. Someone mentioned it earlier that perhaps there wasn't the adequate buffer. I can tell you it's much, much better than it was with the previous owner who resisted that sidewalk for many years, despite all of Mr. Teasley's great works. That sidewalk was sorely missed by runners. I first recall attending a Junior League of Tampa show house on that property in the 70s with my mother when, as someone else mentioned, it was in great disrepair. Later in my childhood, when the Mendez family owned the property, they hosted numerous social and community events there associated with their charitable foundation. So the home has seen a lot of activity over the years, which I believe that Blake Casper's club will similarly experience. Fortunately, the Mendez family restored the home, which allows for today's creative reimagining. As a proud South Tampa resident who has lived and traveled throughout the world, it's sometimes disheartening to visit other locales and come to the realization that Tampa is missing a few key cultural pieces found elsewhere in leading global cities. I suspect that Blake, too, feels that void, but unlike most of us, he's doing something about it, devoting his time and treasure to execute on a unique vision, one that will help place Tampa among those leading global cities. Better yet, his vision for the Stovall is supported by a proven redevelopment track record in the Oxford Exchange that so many others have mentioned. It's hard for me to imagine a better use for this property than what Blake and his family have put forth tonight. As such, I urge you to support this application. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Carlos Alfonso, and I live at 2913 Harborview. Our house is the fourth house in from Bayshore Boulevard, just to the north, about 5 or 6 streets from the project. And I'm here to speak in favor of it as well. I really have not, like some of the people, I have not known Mr. Casper a long time. I really got familiar with him through the project at the Oxford Exchange. I am an architect by training, and I've been in the real estate business as well in Tampa for a very long time, all my career. I just was amazed at the attention to detail, the quality, and the design taste, and the passionate intention that was put forward in the Oxford Exchange project. And that really caught my attention and got me to really seek Mr. Casper out as a person that I just really respected. Having lived on Harborview for the last 20 years, I can tell you that there are far more high-rises now on Bayshore than there were, causing far more congestion than this project would ever cause. I also strongly support the historic nature of preserving the house. And I really like the fact that this is a lower density project for Bayshore. We've all seen, as was said before, we had the Colonnade, which was a commercial venture serving alcohol on Bayshore, and look what it is now. And you know, when I moved into our house on Harborview, I could see all around me. Now I can see almost all around me, except there's one very tall building right near us. And I fully support the preservation of lower density projects along Bayshore, and I hope this sets a trend for us in the future. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Steve Strasky, 1909 South Brookline Street. I'm here in support of Blake Casper's Stovall House project. I've had the occasion to present to City Council once before in a fairly contested rezoning project, and I know it's important that all the interested parties have their say. We're fortunate to have individuals who care about their neighborhood here tonight, but respectfully, I believe that the worst case scenarios will simply not come to pass. To characterize Blake as a developer, I believe, is something of a misnomer. To me, he's one of Tampa's finest visionaries, someone with a vested interest in his community, our community, who's taken on projects that are good for Tampa's soul and good for Tampa's future. One need to look no further than the Oxford Exchange for what he and his team are capable of. And there's no doubt that his vision for the Stovall House will be just as elegant and just as responsible and just as respectful of the concerns of those around it. Casper personally knows many of the people who live adjacent or near the Stovall House and is sensitive to the neighborhood's concerns. He's worked with them towards finding an agreed-upon resolution that I believe is more than reasonable. Blake should be commended for bringing this project forward. His vision is protective of Tampa's history, respects the Bayshore beautiful neighborhood, and it also helps move Tampa forward. I'm proud to support Blake's efforts, and I kindly ask for your support. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alexander Inacio, and I live at 3507 Bayshore Boulevard. I'm the managing partner and global chairman of Woodlawn Capital Partners, an active investor, developer, and owner of five-star hospitality assets globally. We are developing in excess of $1 billion of historic preservation projects in the United States and Europe. This project, the Stovall House, continues a tradition in Tampa of adaptive reuse of existing buildings, starting with Eulalie, continuing to armature works, extending to the Hall on Franklin. We are gaining reputation in the United States for actively preserving our historic assets and preserving them for future generations with the new use. When I met Blake about this project, this is one of the lowest density uses of an asset of this size. It is a great benefit to this city, and it can continue in the legacy of Oxford Exchange. I had the Senior Vice President of Global Luxury of Hilton Worldwide in town 6 weeks ago. we were discussing Tampa as a future global city. They knew about Oxford Exchange. They knew about Armature Works, and we dined there at Oxford Exchange. This project will help Tampa continue to grow, building off the legacy and the projects of strategic property partners with Water Street Tampa. I don't usually get involved in land use and rezonings. I'm an investment banker on most parts. But I can say that this project truly will grow Tampa in our nation's eye. We run our back office out of Tampa, and I'm proud to call Tampa my main home. I went to high school in Tampa. I've lived here in excess of 15 years. I'm happy to say this project continues the legacy that Tampa's been building for the past 10 years. I used to live next to the yacht club. I've lived in Palm Beach next to 3 different country clubs. My family has founded 2 clubs in Florida. And I can say from significant experience that a majority of members are never on site at one time. It is a worst case scenario at any point, and it rarely happens. We praise the yacht club for bringing such value to the Ballast Point neighborhood, building up an area, continuing its growth, and making south of Gandy a welcoming neighborhood. This brings that same legacy north. We've seen significant change on Bayshore, and we all know that with zoning changes, we can redevelop part of Bayshore into high-rises. In my opinion, looking at historic projects globally, this is a rare historic site that can be preserved with its original building and adding to its historic grounds. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Council. Casey Ellison, 3016 West Villarosa Park. I'm here tonight to speak both as a neighbor and a concerned citizen of Tampa. I personally have been involved with, and my company, EWI Construction, has been involved with a lot of the adaptive reuse projects mentioned here tonight. Oxford Exchange, Tampa Armature Works, the factory in Ybor City, which is another great use of adaptive reuse, and the Stovall is just going to be the crown jewel of all of those when it's completed. I would also like to say that there's a lot of emotion around this issue. And I think at the end of the day, emotion is really not what we're here for. We're here for the facts. The fact is that the Casper family will deliver what they say they will. I've lived it at Oxford Exchange. Every day, every decision that we made during that project was based on the good of the project and the good of this community. And you see how it turned out. We won the Florida Historic Preservation of the Year Award. We won AIA Project of the Year, and the Planning Commission awarded many awards to the project. Fact, city staff has rendered their opinion, as has the Planning Commission. I know they're not all attorneys, but they know what they're doing, I promise. I've lived with this city staff for a long time. They're very, very good at what they do. Fact, traffic impacts. There's traffic studies, multiple traffic studies that say this is not going to have a significant traffic impact on our neighborhood. Therefore, it doesn't make me fear my children's lives anymore if it's there tomorrow. Fact, this will increase the value of our homes. This is proven by property values around both TYCC and Paul Mesilla. And in my opinion, it is fact that for Tampa and for my neighborhood, that you need to vote yes on this tonight. It's a critical issue for our city. And 5 years from now, the folks in this room will sit here and they'll realize what it's done for their property values and the total neighborhood, and they'll be happy that you voted yes. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council, and thank you for your service. Obviously, there's a lot of passion in the room on both sides, and obviously you'll have a big vote, and so thank you for your time. First of all, I'm obviously here in support of the Stovall project and Mr. Casper's proposal. As a neighbor, you know, the assumptions that the property values will decrease, I think, are.
Name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, Stan Lipsey.
Okay.
Address is 2911 West Fair Oaks Avenue. The assumption that the property values are going to decrease with the approval of Stovall is just that, an assumption. Mr. Dominic, who sold his house that abuts to Stovall, the house didn't even hit the market. They had 2 backup offers. So I think, you know, there's been a lot of numbers thrown out, but I think we need to deal with the facts. Like myself, I also played on the grounds of the Stovall when the Mendez family owned the property. And I think, you know, by opening this up and clearing the large cypress trees that have been there for many decades to a club is a phenomenal plan and proposal. And as mentioned many times prior, you know, this is a game changer for the city to help retain, attract other corporations, retain young talent with the USF Medical building being built downtown. And also, as stated as well, we compete with many other markets in Austin, Charlotte. You know, this is something that Tampa can put their stamp on and say this is a phenomenal project. I've known Blake and the rest of the Casper family for many decades, and when he says he's going to do something, he does it right, cuts no corners, and I think that we're very fortunate to have him in our community, and the city couldn't really handpick a better owner to take over for the Stovall property. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Allison Adams. I've been sworn in. I live at 2512 North Dundee. When my brother and I opened Oxford Exchange in 2012, we believed a new gathering place in Tampa that would cultivate community and conversation was a good idea. It was a totally new concept, and many people questioned why. Most didn't think it would ever survive. 6 years later, we have been humbled by the extraordinary number of people who've embraced the concept and made it a part of their daily lives. The Stovall House was conceived out of a similar vision: to create and foster a sense of community and a unique environment, to honor historic property that has special meaning to our family, and to preserve it for our city. As a Tampa native and someone who is deeply involved in the cultural arts of our community, I believe it is critical to have settings that support the arts and provide a platform for well-known guest speakers, artists, and authors, special places like the Stovall House. The Stovall House will be much more than a place for professionals, friends, and families to gather for a shared meal. It will have a strong educational component. In the 6 years Oxford Exchange has been open, we've learned a lot about what it takes to foster cultural exchanges. I thought it would be easy to get authors to come to Tampa and host signings at Oxford Exchange. After all, it was a bookstore with ample space, and it was designed from the very beginning to host events. What we quickly learned was that publishing houses were not willing to spend the money to send their authors to Tampa. Historically, we were never able to get an audience large enough to make it worth the time and energy. It took a lot of patience and persistence, but we have slowly built that audience, and now often have to partner with Tampa Theater for events that are larger than we can accommodate. But we still have a lot of room to grow. The Stovall House presents an additional incentive for these people to come to Tampa. Imagine giving them the opportunity to speak with our greater community at Tampa Theater, the Straz, or the Tampa Museum, with an intimate dinner after at the Stovall House, quiet accommodations, and a conversation with a smaller group at breakfast before they leave. It would be a wonderful way to not only showcase our city, but to engage the people who live here. Whether it is the Straz, Tampa Theater, our History Center, or other fabulous cultural destinations, we should all be doing things that strengthen and inspire our community. The Stovall House provides another unique opportunity to do so. Please support a reimagined Stovall House by voting yes tonight, so we can enrich our community, preserve the property for generations to enjoy, and showcase the best that Tampa has to offer. Thank you.
Good evening, Councilman. My name is Robert Soriano. I live at 2903 West Bayshore Court, immediately adjacent to the property, right behind it on the south side. Ground zero, if you will. Now, I'm an advocate of development in Tampa. I totally believe in it, but I submit it's the responsibility of the City Council to make sure that the development that occurs does not cause Tampa to lose its soul to developers who have no compunction about tearing apart great residential neighborhoods for commercial gain. We look to the council to protect us, maintain the character and stability of our neighborhood. Now, our family and the vast majority of our neighbors strongly oppose the requested variances as inappropriate and inconsistent with a residential neighborhood. Now, we don't have the financial means to engage in marketing and public relations campaigns or take out large political ads in the newspapers, as Mr. Casper's done, but unlike him, we live in the neighborhood. Care about it as a place to live, not as a place to make money or as a place to aggrandize oneself by having a fancy club. Our family bought our house with the justifiable expectation of living in a single-family residential neighborhood, the one set out in the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. It boggles my mind and makes no sense that someone can say that this proposal is consistent with that plan because it's called a private recreational facility. And it's unclear to me what recreation is really being planned here. I mean, semantics aside, this is a proposed entertainment business serving alcohol indoors and outdoors, having restaurant, hotel rooms with all the attendant traffic, noise, lights, and odors that come with that. Under this proposal, my bedroom will overlook a parking lot with 80 spaces. Now, I went down to the Publix on Bayshore. They have 120. So this is 2/3 of the parking lot of Publix on Bayshore. That's a pretty big parking lot. There's also going to be a valet station right underneath my bedroom window. So when they're beeping their keys and people are after having a few drinks or waiting for their cars and speaking loudly when I like to go to sleep, I'm not going to be able to. And is it right that our family should be forced to reside next to this business and be deprived of the quiet enjoyment that so that other people can wine and dine literally under our noses? Or that Mr. Casper and his business associates can make a profit from? I also submit that his claim that he's trying to, that this is an effort to save Stovall House, I think it's disingenuous. In reality, the proposal is to turn a private residence into an exclusive private club. You don't save a private residence by turning into it a bar, even an attractive bar.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you. Please don't approve this. We'll thank you for it in years to come if you don't.
Thank you. One name, Mike Fanning. One additional minute, please.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and to speak on behalf of my family who live at 2903 West Bayshore Court. Our property is immediately adjacent to the Stovall House. I'm sorry?
Please state your name.
Ksenia Mayorva, I apologize. Our property is immediately adjacent to the Stovall House. The property line is no further from the back of our house than you're sitting from me right now. It's to the point to where when the fountain is going, we can hear the water. That's how close we are. So we are very concerned about the parking lot that would literally be placed in our backyard. And over the course of this project, we have received various assurances, from personal assurances that I don't think are necessarily enforceable to the assurances that we would be protected by law. Of course, Tampa, like any city, has a municipal ordinance on noise. And I'm here to talk to you today about the enforcement of a municipal noise ordinance, because I have some experience with that. If you look at the statistics, the Tampa Police Department receives over 7,000 noise complaints every year. We don't know how many of those ultimately result in enforcement of any kind, but I can share my experiences with you. I had the occasion to need to enforce a municipal noise ordinance once, and over the course of a year, I made 27 calls to the police non-emergency line. Of those 27 calls, I received a response twice. That is, on 2 occasions, an officer was dispatched and had the ability to speak to the people that were making the noise. Now, I completely understand that our men and women who serve in blue have tremendous responsibility and who have much more important things to do than to come out for a noise complaint. So it's not without understanding that that I'm here with this issue of them only coming out twice. However, on each of those times, it took them 2 hours to come out, and by the time they came out, the noise was over. So my point to you is this: how do we enforce the noise ordinance? We have theoretical protection, but as a person who's been practicing law for 10 years, I'm here to tell you a law is only as good as the mechanics that enforce it. And how do we enforce this? The municipal code provides for a series of fines. Great. You know what those fines range from? $75 for the first offense to $450 for the fourth. Now, if we're talking about an entity of this caliber, $450 could be just worked in as a cost of doing business, effectively a noise permit as opposed to a noise fine. Much has been said today of the Oxford Exchange, and I'll be the first to tell you, I like it. I've been there. I go there with friends, I enjoy it, and I think it brings character to our city. But I think it's distinguishable from what we're talking about today. Oxford Exchange is not in anyone's backyard. Oxford Exchange does not bring the level of noise that it will bring to my immediate family home. My family bought its home with the intention of enjoying serenity and peace and quiet family time, being able to sit on the back porch and read a book. We're all readers, everyone from my parents to my 15-year-old sister. And that's really important to us. And I hope it's really important to you. And I urge you to consider that when you make this decision. Thank you.
Sandy Kirkner, thank you. Carlene Lester, thank you. Mike Rass, thank you. Siriar Kinzinger, I'm sorry, I hope I didn't.
Skylar Kinzinger, sorry.
Skylar, okay.
She's right here.
I see her there. Emmanuel Ramirez, thank you. Wanda Janizensky, thank you, that's 6. And Jeff, how do you pronounce your last name? Thank you, that's 7 for a total of 10 minutes.
Kirk Kumagai, 2918 West Coachman Avenue. You heard from my wife earlier. We live 6 houses from this proposed commercial business. And Mr. Castro said it's personal to him. Well, it's personal to me because, if you could turn this on, that's our daughter. And she, in 24 minutes, will turn 5. And sitting in our garage right now is this pink bike that she's wanted for the past 6 months. So we've heard a lot of great things, a lot of people getting emotional, but we haven't heard a lot of facts. So let's talk about the facts. Because I got the opportunity to meet the council, and I remember 2 months ago when we all gathered here on June 28th, and we talked about traffic safety. So let's talk about traffic, because no one's talked about it, they haven't given you the facts. So the petitioner submitted a traffic report by the White House Group, and they only analyzed 2 of the 18 hours the commercial business is going to be open. 53 peak morning trips into and out of the commercial business, 117 peak afternoon trips into and out of the business. They didn't analyze the other 16 or how many hours that the commercial business is going to be open. I guess that's not required by the city. And that puzzles me as a parent, because that other 16 hours that traffic is going to be going by our house is just as dangerous as the peak hours. So I forgot to mention, I am a member of the Florida Bar, and I'm also the president of Keep Bayshore Beautiful. So Keep Bayshore Beautiful conducted their own study, and the total traffic into and out of this commercial business, because that's what it is 1,277 trips every day. 60% of that traffic, by their own White House group, will go to and from on Bayshore, north on Bayshore. 30% will go to the south, to and from the south. And 10%, which concerns me as a parent of a 5-year-old that's going to get this bike and start riding this bike tomorrow, 10% of that traffic, of those 1,277 trips into this commercial business, will go by my house. And also on my friend Rob Soriano and Jenna's house, whose daughter watches our daughter. Our estimate is 25% increase on Coachman Avenue and 25% increase of traffic on West Bayshore Court. That's by their own assignments, their own hand assignments. So let's talk about, and I know you know how dangerous our roads are. 50 pedestrians in 2016 and 17 were killed in vehicle crashes. 12 bicyclists in 2016 and 17 were killed in bicycle crashes. And here, I'll put it up. But you already know that, because we sat here all morning and into the afternoon to talk about traffic safety. You want to look at the highlight, and I'll give it to you, Mr. Shelby, at the conclusion of this. Right there. 50 traffic fatalities for pedestrians, 12 bicyclists, both in 2016 and 17. And you know what Beth Alban said? The executive director of the MPO, more people on the road just equals more crashes statistically. And I know Mr. Smith in the back and Mr. Gardner are going to get up and down, but it also has to do with design. And Ms. Alban said, yes, it's a lot to do with lighting. And I understand that. But just statistically, more vehicles on the road means more crashes, more threat, more hazard to my daughter. And everyone that uses Coachman Avenue, that uses our most iconic street. And that's supposed to be okay? When we sat here all morning and we talked about traffic safety, you bought into Vision Zero. So you tell me how almost 466,000 trips into and out of this commercial business in a year on our most iconic street, 10% of which will go past my daughter. How does that make her more safer? It's not my job to prove this is dangerous. It's Mr. Casper's job and his team to convince you that this is to the public benefit, the health, safety, and welfare. How is that safer to my daughter? I'm sorry, John, I know I'm not supposed to get emotional, but I am emotional because this is personal to me. And then you want to throw on alcohol, and let's talk about alcohol. You want to talk about safety and alcohol? Here's the facts. Here's the facts that everyone hasn't talked about. Both in 2016 and 17, over 4,000 DUI arrests in Hillsborough County. Number 1 in the state for crashes, for injuries. Number 2 in the state for DUI fatalities. And the petitioner uses Chapter 14 of the Tampa City Code. Chapter 14, from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. That's what he's allowed to serve alcohol. Monday through Saturday. Oh, and then we have to start later on Sunday. We start at 7 a.m. and go to 11 a.m. But let's peel the onion back on, and I'm going to hand Mr. Shelby. So DUI detection and standardized field sobriety testing by the National Highway Safety Transportation. Let's peel the onion back in the International Chiefs of Police. What does that 4,000 arrests mean? Because I know they're going to get up, well, we've never had any problem. Just because you didn't get arrested doesn't mean that you're not committing DUI. For every DUI arrest, between 500 and 2,000 go undetected, unarrested. So multiply that by the 4,000 DUI arrests we had in 2016 and 2017. We had 2 million undetected DUIs in this city. And Mr. Casper wants to serve alcohol until 3 a.m. I'm sorry, 3 a.m. That's what it says, 3 a.m. in Chapter 14. 6 houses from my house, from my 5-year-old daughter? That's supposed to be safe for my daughter? Those are the facts. And let's keep going. Conservatively estimated that the typical DUI violator commits it 80 times per year. 80 times per year. Times the 4,000 DUI arrests we had, that's 320,000 DUIs. So you pick what you want. Either 2 million, I choose the lower because I would hate to think there's 2 million DUI violators in the city of Tampa. But the petitioner says, yeah, it's personal. He cares about the privacy, but he didn't say anything about the safety of my daughter. No one said anything that's going to make this commercial entity, this commercial business, safer to my daughter and to all the children. Yeah, Mr. Casper had this big page, Keep Bayshore Beautiful, but he forgot. He forgot the signs that I paid for out of my own pocket and keep our children safe. He forgot that part. So let's keep going. I got a minute and 30 seconds left. So, the NTH research suggests the late night weekend hours open till 7 a.m. to 1 a.m., but the hotel, the bed and breakfast, is open until 24/7. So chapter 14 says, hey, I can serve until 3 a.m. Late night weekend hours, 10% of vehicles on the road, probably DUI. And I know Mr. Casper and Mr. Smith in the back are going to say, well, that's not our clientele. Well, here's what the NTHS says about that. It says, has been and remains a popular crime, but one that many people from all walks and stations of life commit. And guess what? I am an attorney. In my first job out of law school, I was a municipal court prosecutor. And then I went on to become a Marine Corps judge advocate. And I prosecuted and processed everyone from all walks of life, all stations of life. So you here, I remember, I think it was you, Councilman Sowers, you said traffic safety. Traffic safety is our first concern. So if it really is your concern, if you really believe in Vision Zero, they haven't proved anything. They haven't proved this is safer. It's not my burden to prove it's unsafe. It's his burden to prove that it's safe to my child. We'll be 5 here in 15 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
You want the whole book?
Good evening, council members. I'll be brief. My name is PJ Gardner. I've lived in Tampa my whole life. I presently reside at 2514 West Morrison, and I operate a business just off Bayshore at 511 West Bay Street. I've been sworn in, and I strongly support the Stovall House project. The year was 1988 when the bestseller Megatrends declared Tampa as America's next great city. 30 years later, we've yet to fully lay claim to that title. However, perhaps at no other time since then have we been so close, due in part to several great community leaders who have stepped up to create transformative and positive change. Blake Casper is one of these great Tampa leaders. He embodies the virtues espoused in the motto of his local alma mater, Jesuit High School, Men for Others, giving generously to countless well-known community nonprofits, investing considerably in lesser but greatly needed community resources like Riverside Recovery, spending countless hours making a difference by volunteering in service to our community. Blake, Tate, Allison, and the Casper family have done all these things and more. Blake is a good man with great hopes, ambitions, and a passion for the city he loves, his lifelong home, Tampa. Embrace it, nurture it, trust it. Blake's earned our community's trust and confidence, and he'll make us proud once again. When I visit the masterful Oxford Exchange, I marvel at how Blake finds inspiration in the work of others, and then rethinks, reimagines, recontextualizes, transforms, and elevates it, creating a vision that is uniquely his own, that then becomes our own as proud citizens of Tampa. Here again, Blake, Tate, and the Casper family are selflessly pouring their time, talents, and treasure into creating innovative concepts to further help Tampa realize its full potential. The Oxford Exchange was the Casper's original masterpiece. Please do not let it be their last. And now when I hear that their latest vision for the building and grounds situated on this iconic location, I see the Stovall House as a place where Tampa's natural beauty and stunning vistas will be brought to their fullest, offering respite, recreation, and inspiration amid the chaos of our everyday lives. I have no doubt that the Stovall House will be a place where great things can and will happen, which brings me to my conclusion. In the not-too-distant future, I envision the CEO of the Fortune 500 company that's eluded our great city to date coming to the Stovall House after experiencing Tampa's rich history, inspiring culture, and welcoming hospitality. He or she will awake the next morning, take in the beautiful sunrise beyond the Stovall House and grounds, and over our Bayshore Boulevard of dreams. In this moment, the CEO will reach the same conclusion that each of us has made. Tampa is a special place that I want my personal and professional family to call home. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Steve McLaren. We live at 4803 Bayshore Boulevard, just 7 houses down from the Stovall House. That will identify where our property is. Oh, upside down. We have 2 children, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. We purchased our home earlier this year, and we took stock and relied on the protection and the long-standing zoning of the Bayshore beautiful community, being primarily residential, when we picked our home. I'm actually very surprised Mr. Casper's request is even being considered, as it seems so black and white that it's an incompatible commercial property, completely opposite from the current zoning. By definition, commercial property refers to real estate property that is used for business activities. How can Mr. Casper's proposal possibly be deemed consistent or even comparable or with its surrounding properties? How many other residents will have to submit monthly sales tax returns to the state of Florida? Well, I can 100% positively state that the state of Florida, an authoritative body, will view Mr. Casper's business model as commercial. They will require sales tax on every single dollar he sells. And that is the difference, how it is not even close to being residential. When the tragedy on Bayshore happened this past May, our family saw the city rise up in protective mode like we have never seen before. The speed limit was changed and lowered almost overnight. Police were posted 24/7 on Bayshore. Signs and media were everywhere. A memorial was set up by the residents. All this informing and creating awareness. All this done to protect our residents and visitors from this ever happening again, all in the theme of safety. As a resident living on Bayshore Boulevard, a taxpayer, and most importantly as a father of small children, I implore this council to continue this spirit and theme of safety and to protect the residents and visitors and this community and say no to Mr. Casper's request and the Stovall project.
name, a couple additional names, but there are 7 total that are here. That's 10 minutes total.
Good evening, members of council and Mr. Shelby. My name is John Grandoff. My address is Suite 3700 Bank of America Plaza. I have the pleasure of representing Mr. Richard Jenkins, who lives at the corner of Bayshore Boulevard and Coachman. Mr. Jenkins has retired there. He's a longtime client of our firm. He cannot be with you this evening. He's asked me to speak to you and implore to you to vote this project no. Mr. Jenkins lives right here. Here's the Stovall project, Mr. Jenkins' home. This is the alcoholic beverage report. What's interesting about this report is Mr. Manasseh, who prepared it, provided you some photographs of the adjoining properties, which are within 50 feet of the project. Pardon me for a moment. There's Mr. Jenkins' home. That is 4417 Bayshore Boulevard, which is noted in the report as the home within 50 feet of alcoholic beverage sales. Another one of the homes is Dennis and Francine Levine's home to the rear, within 50 feet of alcoholic beverage sales. Not to mention the other folks that have come to you this evening within 50, 100, 250, 500, 1,000 feet of this project. This hearing tonight is about selling alcohol. That's what it's all about. Here's the map that the zoning staff prepares, showing the concentric lines, showing the Stovall project. Let's go back to the basics. First of all, I want to put one thing to rest. The condominium project on Bayshore and Beta Bay was zoned for condominiums. It was RM35. It was built without a rezoning. The condominium phantom in the room tonight is completely a phantom. This property is zoned RS150, planned R10. It cannot become a condominium without significant land use approvals. I would venture to say this council would not ever approve them. So that is a total phantom. Also, the 25 home phantom is not going to happen by doing this math of R10 versus the acreage of the property. You can't put 25 homes on this property. You have to rezone it. It's RS150. Single family, RS150. Quote, this district provides areas primarily for low-density, single-family detached dwellings on spacious lots wherein a property owner may obtain reasonable assurance of compatible development. That's the definition. Reasonable assurance of compatible development. I've been practicing land use law for almost 30 years. I have never taken an application to put a commercial project in the R10 district. It is impossible because it is inconsistent without a comprehensive plan amendment. And I venture to you that politically impossible to change an R10 district to a commercial zone or commercial plan category that you have on Gandy, Dale Mabry, Beta Bay, other major thoroughfares. Can't be done. I've never done one. Why Stovall House development? It is not a private recreational facility. It is not a bed and breakfast. Why a bed and breakfast is not an accessory use to a private recreational facility? You have to do mental gymnastics to get to this site plan. Number one, definition. A private recreational facility is a privately operated facility providing indoor and outdoor recreation activities, included but not limited to community clubs, meeting halls, country clubs, golf courses, riding stables, and tennis clubs. What is the recreational activity on this property? It's never been discussed tonight. What is it? Bed and breakfast. A residential building or group of buildings where transient lodging unit accommodations without independent facilities, or kitchen facilities, are offered for rental by day or week and meal services are provided. Such use shall contain no more than 11 transient lodging units in addition to the resident manager's unit. The Stovall House is not a residential building. According to the staff report, is a private recreational facility. Here comes the gymnastics. And finally, an accessory use is a use on the same lot or same structure with or of a nature and extent customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use of the lot or structure. A bed and breakfast is not customarily incidental to a private recreational facility. It's separate. It's a separate accessory use. Mental, zoning, gymnastics with our code. So what is the Stovall development? What is it really? Well, let's talk about the site plan that's before you tonight. Quote, alteration of historic structure and detached new construction for a privately operated, membership-based facility providing indoor and outdoor recreation activities, which we still haven't been told about, including meeting rooms, social spaces, dining rooms, chef's kitchen, catering for special events, operations offices, pool and pool house, support and storage spaces, multi-purpose rooms, greenhouse, fitness rooms, and overnight lodging. That's their description on the site plan. There it is. Architect put it right there. Now let's talk about a hotel. Same code. Interesting coincidence here. Hotel, a building or group of buildings containing in combination 10 or more transient lodging units offered for rental by day or week. Typically, accessory uses to a hotel and motel include such things as a restaurant, bar, lounge, meeting rooms, and outdoor recreational areas, subject to applicable use standards and processes. Designated truck route. Bayshore Boulevard is not a designated truck route. You cannot waive that rule in a PD rezoning because the transportation code says the provisions of this chapter shall apply to all improvements and land within the corporate city limits of the city unless they are expressly exempted by law. Transportation code is nowhere discussed in the staff report, nowhere discussed in the site plan. Bayshore Boulevard is not a truck route. The closest truck route is McDill Avenue. The only way to get to this property and not get a ticket is to come down Coachman and to leave going up Bayshore Court, because the code says that a trucker coming for a delivery must get back to the truck route by the shortest route possible. So you're going to have a loop current of traffic coming down Coachman, make deliveries in the front door on Bayshore, the driver's risking a ticket, and then he's going to go back up Bayshore Court. Let's talk about the ticket, because the code says we're going to fine you if you get caught on Bayshore driving a truck. $150 for the first offense, $300 for the second offense, $450 for third and subsequent offenses. This does not prohibit the incidental truck delivering furniture or the construction truck delivering lumber on Bayshore. That's okay, but that truck has to get back to McDill as soon as possible. The Gandy truck route ends at McDill. The Beta Bay truck route ends at the Crosstown Expressway. Euclid is not a truck route. El Prado is not a truck route. It's McDill. That's why all the commercial buildings and restaurants are on McDill. Let's talk about Bayshore Boulevard and what's been going on Bayshore Boulevard. The colonnade was a vested, legal, non-conforming use on multifamily property. Not an issue tonight. Tampa Yacht Club, Palma City Golf and Country Club, built in 1904 and 1916, vested, grandfathered uses. Before this, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to need some more time to adequately represent my client. I request 5 more minutes, please. Please stop the clock.
You will get 3 more minutes.
I'll do my best. So those clubs are vested. There was no zoning in the city till 1956. They predate zoning, therefore they're vested. When the Bayshore Beautiful subdivision was platted, it provided a 30-foot building line. This is where Kirk, Dennis, Rob, Thania live. This is Mr. Jenkins' property. The zoning code requires that coachmen have a 30-foot front yard. They missed it. They put a 15-foot front yard. That's illegal. The zoning code says, as Dennis Levine quoted to you, that in a private residential facility, recreational facility, okay, no parking or loading areas or mechanical equipment shall be located within 25 feet of any adjoining property which is in a residential district. The site plan, please hold my time for a moment. Site plan, Dennis and Francine live here. The site plan shows the 19 parking spaces going right up to 8 feet away. That line should be 25 feet away because this property is adjacent and it's residentially zoned. No ambiguity, no need to interpret it. It's residentially zoned. It may be a right-of-way, but it's residentially zoned, and that's what the code intends. Bayshore Boulevard has 2 front yards. I know about this because during the CityVest project, the City Council quickly passed an ordinance creating a second front yard on DeSoto Avenue to force 2 front yards on Bayshore and DeSoto. So the rule says that where the corner abutting the aforementioned portion of Bayshore also abuts another street with a historic pattern of front yard orientation. Let's talk about historic pattern of front yard orientation. Bayshore Beautiful subdivision plat. Mr. Coachman, who platted that and signed it right here, put a 30-foot building line on Coachman to protect these folks, to protect my client. And the code says, where the corner abutting lot of the aforementioned Bayshore also abuts the street with a historic pattern of front yard orientation, development shall follow the historic pattern of both streets without one street or the other being administratively selected as front. There's another mistake on the site plan because right across the street from Mr. Jenkins, they're showing a 15-foot corner yard, they call it. They're 100% wrong. And what's really interesting is 6 weeks ago, this corner yard, front yard, was enforced on a client of mine on Bayshore and Willow. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That needs to be 30 feet because if it's not, the new construction is in the yard, the loading is in the yard, and there are 6 more parking spaces in the yard. This site plan is incompetent.
Thank you, sir.
In summary, I need to summarize. This is not a referendum about the Casper family civic pride. They have brought to you the Oxford Exchange, Water Street, Armature Works, all commercial projects. That is not competent substantial evidence. I have 2 cases decided by Florida courts, Marion versus Priest, which is 786 Southern 2nd, 623, that finds that citizen testimony in a zoning matter is perfectly permissible and constitutes competent, substantial evidence so long as it is fact-based. That is what you've heard tonight versus compliments, praise, admiration of the Casper family. That's not the test tonight. No one disputes that.
Your time is up.
I'm covering 2 applications, Mr. Chairman.
Your time is up.
I respectfully request that
Next speaker.
there's competent and substantial evidence in the record to support denial of this project. I ask that you do so this evening. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Adrienne Hansen, 4106 Queller Way, Tampa. And I'm here to read a brief but compelling letter from a resident whose home is right next door to the Stovall House. Let me show you. So it is right next to the main house of the Stovall project. So, dear City Council members, we purchased the home directly adjacent to the Stovall House in June, so we're just settling into the neighborhood. We're new to Tampa, having relocated here from Washington, D.C. I was recruited here to lead the leasing efforts for Water Street. While I've been approached by many headhunters over the years, this opportunity was different and really resonated. It's a game changer for the city in that it will be Tampa's largest mixed-use development and will punctuate all the other activity that's helping define this community. Having a project like Water Street means you need projects like what Blake and Tate Casper are proposing for Stovall House. We first learned of their plans as we were looking at our prospective home. They met with us, answered our questions, and couldn't have been more accommodating. We immediately recognized the full potential. Not only were we comfortable and excited about the opportunity to live adjacent to this unique property, we were also among a group of neighbors who helped develop a series of conditions to address neighborhood concerns. The Stovall House will be a first-class project, very thoughtful, just like the Oxford Exchange. The social club concept itself is not new and is almost something you come to expect from a forward-thinking city. This is the type of project that will help me sell Tampa, which is really what I'm doing here. I stand by many of my new neighbors in support of this project, and I urge you to approve it in its entirety. Respectfully, Dave Revert. Thank you.
All right, next speaker.
Good morning, Council. Sorry, I have to be the one to wish you a new day, so I'll try and make this quick. Nancy Walker, 1030 South Sterling Street Avenue. When I was first asked to take a look at the Stovall House, I tried to envision what a club would offer and those that would be affected by this type of venue, and I was skeptical. I considered what other clubs that already front Bayshore Boulevard, the Yacht Club, Tampa Women's Club, the Garden Club, to name a few. But walking through the historic Stovall House and around the beautiful grounds, it felt magical. The intimate scale spoke volumes. It is an oasis that is clearly in a residential setting, but also claims Bayshore Boulevard as its front door. After meeting Blake and his team, it was profoundly clear to me that Blake would not only preserve the Stovall, but build upon its character and shape it into something that Tampa would be proud to call their own. Will it fit into the beautiful Bayshore beautiful neighborhood? Absolutely. Many social clubs the world over exist today in residential settings. There are hundreds of them, and reimagined historical residences that have been preserved and thrive today as alternatives to other community gathering spaces. South Tampa's neighborhoods have been intrinsically formed by a tension of old and new, commercial sitting close to residential, and an eclectic mix of architecture. It is compact and filled with borders that are blurred. And it's what makes South Tampa, and it is what creates the very value of our region. I support the Stovall House and ask that you not only weigh the pros and cons of this project with its residential context, but put into perspective the much greater opportunity for our most, as we've heard tonight, iconic street. I also ask that you carefully consider the scale. As we've heard also, the Colonnade restaurants had more parking spaces, more square feet, served alcohol every night, and it lived alongside residents for 80 years. In its place, you've approved a new condominium with way more square feet, more parking spaces, thus more alcohol, more traffic, if we look at it in that context from some of the things we've heard. And undoubtedly, many of those approximately 142 homeowners, myself included, as I will call Bayshore my own home next year, will enjoy a cocktail every night. We have allowed too much of our history to vanish, and we have plenty of condos. What we don't have and desperately need to foster are more local visionaries like Blake Casper, who will personally invest in moving Tampa forward, visionaries who will thoughtfully build new, one-of-a-kind jewels with us and for us. Nothing we choose to do will be without risk, but for the betterment of our city, the pros just outweigh the cons. I ask you to help us keep all of Bayshore beautiful, but tastefully and respectfully allow it to be even more remarkable. Thank you.
Hi, Patrick Willis. I live 2908 West Villa Rosa Park, which is about 200 yards from the Stovall property. I agree with everything that's been said. We don't have to rehash it. Preserving the structure, protecting the density of usage as it currently is. And I just say the Stovall team's actively engaged with us as neighbors. We've had active conversations about traffic concerns, et cetera. You've heard the cons, you've heard traffic, you've heard about rats. I was actually called that on the Next Door Neighbor website when I posted something in favor of the project. And I would also note that when you drive by, or on our way to the yacht club, you have 1,400 yacht club members that drive by Ballast Point Park every time they go to the yacht club, and you don't hear about kids getting run over. I have 2 children. You heard from my lovely wife, who actually said under oath that she lets our children play in the street, so that was sort of interesting. But when I think about it, what cuts through all of this is that Mr. Blake is trying to give us something to be proud of, something Tampa can be proud of. I'm a multi-generational Floridian. My family came down here on an ox cart in the mid-1800s. I was the prodigal son. I went to Philadelphia, went to school at University of Pennsylvania, went to Wharton, worked there for 10 years, met the beautiful woman who hopefully was perjuring herself earlier about the kids. And the largest roadblock to us moving back to Tampa was the lack of things like this. My roots brought us back here. And I often think about other people in my shoes who are leaving big cities, thinking about coming to Tampa, and they don't have the roots. Are they going to choose Tampa? And I think something like this really helps make that case. I work for a company in New York City. I love to brag on Tampa. I tell people all over the country, come to Tampa, move your business to Tampa. I love to brag on Tampa. And I think Stovall will be something to brag about. I really believe Stovall will be something to brag about. It will attract business. It will attract talent. And I think it's appropriately limited in scope. Size and scale, they've worked with us. It'll be one of the lowest density uses in the city when it comes to a property like this. It will be classic. It will be nuanced. It will be something Tampa desperately needs. Gives Tampa something to be proud of. You have the power to give something that we can brag about to people in other cities. Perhaps is even too light a word. There will be additional traffic on my neighborhood, or on my street. I live on Villa Rosa. I'm 2 blocks south of the property. But that is a small price to pay, in my opinion, for such a wonderful cultural institution we have, and someone like Blake and the Caspers who are willing to move forward with this. So thank you. I strongly recommend that you vote in favor of this project.
And the 3 people left in line, you'll be the last 3 speakers. All right. Let's go.
Good evening, thank you. My name is John Lynch. I've been sworn in. I live at 2929 West Bayshore Court, 382 yards from Stovall, 1 street adjacent. Like Patrick, you've heard a lot from people tonight, and like others, I'm a father of 2 young children. Our friends are on Hawthorne, Villa Rosa, Coachman, so they go back and forth. We play out, ride our bikes. We're very comfortable in the neighborhood, and that's very important to us. And that's similar to others. One thing I would like to just think through, if I've listened to all these presentations tonight, and I appreciate your attention and focus. I wish my coworkers could spend 3 or 4 hours listening and going through this. But let's assume that Blake is honorable and will do everything he says he's going to do. And let's assume he can execute a vision. I think we've seen he can do that. We've talked a lot about size tonight, square footage, parking spots, hours of operation. If you watch the video, that's not what this is about. Culture, diversity of thought, wellness, education. This is not a Howard power drinking establishment. There are plenty of those in the area. That's not the environment that this is going to create. We talked about the rules. Some people say they're laughable, the concessions that Mr. Casper's made. Well, I am a member of the Tampa Yacht Club, and there are rules. If I fall outside of those rules, there's a risk to that. I could lose my membership. There's penalties. So you can control these things in a private membership. We also sort of portray everybody that's interested in this as an elite, limited membership. I hope that my membership gets accepted, and I hope that I can participate in this. But if I don't, I still see greater value in this as the people that come and experience Tampa share their experiences. There will be a benefit to the community. Alcohol keeps coming up. If you watch the video also, if you read through the literature, this is not a place to come drink bourbon and scotch for 8 or 9 hours a day. That's not the environment. That's not Blake's lifestyle. That's not what they invest in the community in. That's not what this is about. This is a dignified cultural experience that will be selling alcohol. And finally, on the hotels, it's not a hotel. People will come and they will spend time there as members and guests. That's very common in other cities. And finally, I was invited to be part of the neighborhood community helping on the planning of this. That was referenced earlier. There's a number of us that are part of this. I'm not leaving. I'm staying in Tampa. I love my street and my community, but I am accountable for this also now. So I'm not going to leave here tonight. You won't see it again. Some of my neighbors will trust me and believe that I will hold to my word. But if Blake ever strays from this, our team will hold him accountable and ask him to make concessions and go back to what he told us he would do. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. Please vote yes for this. It's great for Tampa, the community, and I believe my family too. Thank you.
My name is Jacqueline Dietz. I have not been sworn in.
Before you do that, have the other, check and see if the other two been sworn in. That remaining speaker. Yes.
I do. I live at 2904 West Coachman Avenue. My sister spoke earlier. She lives in the same home. I have lived at 2929 West Coachman Avenue. I have lived at 2911 Aileen Avenue. I came here after going to dental school and said I would never live in Tampa. After visiting my sister who lived in her same home with her child and her husband for 20 years, I moved here because of Coachman and Aileen. The trees, the beauty, the camaraderie, the feeling that I got. I have lived in many cities in the United States and a few outside of the country, and I'm still here in South Tampa. This is what I live for. I work hard every day, and I come home to walk these animals on a peaceful, quiet enjoyment of this street and this area. Every person that has spoken, I know them personally. We are very close and we are very friendly. It is a very divided situation on the streets, as you can imagine. We deserve to live in our homes. We have fought hard, we have worked hard, we have studied hard to be able to have our homes, to come home and have peace and quiet. I would like to have the CEO of a Fortune 500 company come and sleep in my bed one night and enjoy the sunrise of Bayshore without us having to lose the quiet enjoyment of trucks coming up and down Coachman Avenue. We go round and round and round in our head knowing what is coming towards us, and we are terrified. We're absolutely terrified for our animals, our children, and ourselves. We cannot imagine any more large vehicles coming down the streets. We cannot imagine people that do not understand that we live there and we love it and we will always love it. The tragedy that happened on Bayshore not long ago has devastated us, and we all did come together, and now we're all coming together. I was sitting at home watching this meeting, and that's why I look like this. I got up because of the next person that's speaking, because she is the love of my life, and I want her and her 20 years in the same house on the same streets to still be the same place when she continues her college education and moves on with her life. please vote no for this, because I am sure that Blake is a wonderful person, but I am too. Thank you.
I'm Olivia McLaughlin. I live on 2904 West Coachman Avenue with my aunt and my parents. I'm 19 years old and I've lived in that house for all of those 19 years, and I couldn't imagine anywhere else being just as good as that street. It's quiet, and it should be quiet. I've lived across from a house being built next door, and I'd wake up in the mornings to trucks beeping, coming down our street, hitting our trees with the top of the trucks, and I can't live through that again with the Stovall house. I would like to come home after working hard at the University of South Florida to get my degree and just come home to peace and quiet, not listening to music, not watching cars go by our street to get into that project. It would be heartbreaking. It would change what our street is. It's for family. It is not for this enjoyment of alcohol, anything like that. I couldn't ever live anywhere else, and this project will change the way I feel about my street. I don't want to become a statistic of somebody who has hit a person on Bayshore, killed somebody. We've already spoken about what happened in May, the woman and her child being hit. I don't want to be one of those statistics either. I don't want any of the children of these people being one of those statistics either. Please do not let that happen to me or anybody else. Say no to this project, please. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the council. My name is Jim Warren. I live at 4612 South Ferdinand. My grandparents built their home on the corner of Bayshore and Oregon in the early 1900s, about the same time the Stovall was coming up, and both of those homes are still standing. My mother was born there in 1909. She and my father married in 1933, and they built their first home on 1800 block of Bayshore, several blocks south of where she was born and raised. I was raised in that home on Bayshore. I remember fondly the days we could walk down the driveway and get the trolley car that came down Rome Avenue and went into the grass median strip that ran all the way to Gandy Boulevard, and for 5 cents we could ride the trolley to Ballast Point and picnic, or take it to the end down at Port Tampa and get off and help them turn it around and ride it back on the return trip. The only high-rise on the Bayshore in those days was the Bayshore Royal Hotel at Howard Avenue. A lot's changed, and the Bayshore has never looked better. After my dad died, my mother moved into Howell Park on Bayshore and Ardson Place, and her fourth and final Bayshore residence in her 102 years in the neighborhood was at Canterbury Towers at El Prado. I bought my first home in 1966 on Coachman Avenue between Bayshore and MacDill. I moved to Villa Rosa Park in '69, bought at 1915 Bayshore in 1975 after the birth of my first son. Then I moved back to Chapin Avenue for 15 years, and pending the birth of my second son, we moved to Hawthorne Road, where I lived for 22 years. A year ago, my wife and I built a home on Ferdinand, where we are today. So for 76 years, I've lived on or within a block of Bayshore. I remember when the neighbors' biggest complaints were the aircraft noise from MacDill Air Force Base. Most of us used to consider that the sound of freedom. I remember the smell of the water at low tide at Bay to Bay. I remember 2 restaurants on Bayshore and 4 filling stations. Those commercial properties since have been repurposed into housing and offices. There was a time just in the past 20 years or so when we all thought only 4 or 5 condos could be built on Bayshore. Now there are, according to my count, 16 between Howard Avenue and the Stovall house, each duly contested but ultimately built. Traffic is bad on Bayshore, it's bad in the whole city. We're growing. It's manageable. The Selma Expressway has helped a great deal, and it'll help a lot more. The biggest ongoing traffic issue that I see seems to be the carpool lines at the Academy of Holy Names along Bayshore and McDill Avenue, and the daily commute with McDill Air Force Base employees. I don't think we want to diminish those. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
All right, Mr. Gardner.
Kurt Gardner, 400 North Ashley Drive. First and foremost, there have been some traffic issues that have been.
I believe he has 6 minutes remaining, is that correct? From the previous. And then the time for rebuttal is generally 5 minutes.
So you got 11 minutes.
The hour is late, and we'll wrap it up quicker than that. First, I'd like to bring up Michael Yates, our traffic consultant. There's been issues raised as it relates to the truck traffic, to the amount of trips generated, and we felt he is an expert on this, and we felt like it would be important for the record to have his testimony.
Good evening, Michael Yates, White House Group. We prepared the traffic analysis that was submitted with the application. On the traffic, basically what we've estimated the trips to be is 113 PM peak hour trips and 57 AM peak hour trips. If you do the math, the ITE does not have a daily trip generation for this type of use. If you use the rule of thumb of 10%, we average AM and PM, gives you a maximum of 850 daily trips. So a very small impact. We did the traffic analysis, analyzed the adjacent intersection, which is Bayshore and Coachman. It operates at an acceptable level of service C during the AM and PM peak hours. We analyzed the intersection of Gandy and Bayshore, which also operates at acceptable level of service, which was C. There is sufficient capacity that exists on Bayshore today, and with the project, it has a V over C of 0.67, so only about 2/3 of the capacity is consumed. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on traffic.
Any questions from council?
Sir, I got a couple questions. One, when you do the analysis, the traffic analysis, it is based on the type of use and what is observable based on what is traffic now.
Correct.
Do you know how many members that this facility is supposed to have?
I don't know an exact number of members, but we used basically the land use category of athletic club and a square footage to estimate the trips from that. And what we looked at also is, does that generate a reasonable trip generation? And with the parking spaces that we're providing, that corresponds to the trip generation. We believe that to be accurate because that is the maximum you can accommodate at the facility.
So when you're looking at it, it's more like a YMCA or something like that. It sounds like, based on what I read in your report, when you say athletic facility, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If you read the definition of the athletic club, it actually matches the characteristics that we described for this. Is it exact? No, but that's what we have to work with. What ITE does to develop these trip generation rates is they take national data from, it could be a whole gamut of sites, and they try to fit it into.
Okay, do you drill down using your own knowledge or basis first on, obviously on the traffic patterns that currently exist, where it's at, but in addition to kind of hone what the use may be specifically for that particular property? Because, you know, when you put a template over it that it is an athletic, it's not. I mean, it's not the same type of thing. So did you do something or adjust it in order to meet whatever it was that they are trying to do here on this property?
So what we did is we went through the ITE manual. So it's a huge book. It's 2 volumes. So we went through and tried to find a use that the definition corresponded to what we were doing. An athletic club was the best land use. And I can go through the definition if you want. But it does closely match the characteristics of this club. Social aspects, athletic aspects. It matches the definition. So once we did that, then we went through and ran the trip generation based on the square footage we're proposing. Then we looked at the trip generation. Does that?
Can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
So, you know, I just want to give an example. Like, so here's a small example. You know, the YMCA, whether it's in South Tampa or in Central Tampa, you know, they have a certain type of use for it. People go there, they use the facilities.
Absolutely.
They may be there for an hour or something like that, and then they leave. Then there's the JCC, which has events there that has, you know, a large number of people that go there. And at times, it's going to be a different type of traffic pattern. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so I guess my point is that it's harder to, you know, put just athletic when I don't think, based on what we've heard, that that's an aspect of what's going to be happening there. It looks like there's going to be a lot more, you know, folks going there to listen to different, you know, speakers and for other things. That's why I'm trying to get at it, if that was adjusted in your analysis.
We took the trip generation that it generated from that, and we looked at the use that was being proposed and the anticipated characteristics of that use, and did those trip generation numbers that came out of the athletic club, did those seem reasonable compared to what we are proposing? And they do. When you look at the number of parking spaces, 80 parking spaces, what ITE generates for this use is 70N during the PM peak hour. Yes, that is when your peak period is going to be. What is the AM peak hour? It estimates 57 total. That makes a lot of sense. You'll probably have your staff coming in. You'll have a few people that come in for breakfast. You'll have, you know, if you have any deliveries, they would probably come in the morning. So yeah, those characteristics, what we did was we looked, do those make sense for the type of use and the characteristics of this facility?
Yeah, I hate to disagree, but it sounds like it's mostly about really just, it didn't sound like you did too much honing for what the specific prospective use is going to be for the Stovall house. That's why I'm a little bit confused, because it's not, you keep falling back on what the ITE says and what the athletic, you know, facility trip generation would have. So, you know, it doesn't sound like you honed it any more than that, is my guess.
We did not modify it. We
Okay,
agreed with the numbers.
I just want to make sure. I want to make sure I understood you. That's
no, we agreed with the numbers that
okay.
What the athletic club generated, we agreed with. That's what we anticipated the trip generation would be.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, David Smith, Greg Robinson on behalf of the applicant. We'll be brief. First of all, I'm going to abstract from the ad hominem arguments that I heard tonight. We'll focus on the issues before us. We heard a lot of heartfelt comments as well, so I wouldn't want to denigrate those with respect to the unfortunate few that were misdirected. We need to focus on what we're doing here. The decision tonight is based on substantial competent evidence. I want to make sure we're clear on that. While you can have lay testimony as to facts, you cannot have lay testimony as to expert opinions. You need expert testimony in that regard. Specifically, for example, much was said about property values. The only person who addressed that issue that had anything remotely related to expert testimony was the banker who indicated he makes mortgages in this area. He indicated the property values will go up. I would suggest he's accurate, and any other statement is inaccurate and is not based on expertise in any event. But what else do we look at? We look at the Planning Commission. We had your Planning Commission report, an expert report that told you exactly what the planning functions were. That was dismissed by somebody as outrageous. That's just a dismissal. That's not countervailing evidence. So the competent evidence you have in the record is what your Planning Commission provided, your Planning Commission staff. You also have your staff. They provided the competent, substantial expert testimony as to the nature and definitions in your code, its application, and how it applies to this property. I would submit we haven't had any expert countervailing testimony to that regard. A lot of opinion testimony from a lot of different lawyers, and we like to think we're right, but sometimes we're not. I would also suggest that the definition of commercial, we heard a lot of articulation as to what that is. By the way, an aside before I start, the facility itself has a pool. I don't know about you, but I use my pool for recreation. So I think it's pretty evident there are some recreational uses associated with this property. So I don't think we need to beat that dead horse very much. But anyway, going back to the issue, what is a commercial? That is an issue that is code specific. The nature of the use and how it fits into your code, how it fits into a PD, and how it fits into the activity on site is something that's uniquely defined by your code. You had that information provided to you by Abby tonight, and I would submit that, as always, she's impeccably accurate in that regard. But let me get to the crux of the matter, and then Truett has a couple of points. You really have a tough decision. I recognize that, and I know you don't nearly get paid enough to do it, but you're going to have to decide whether or not the application before you is a sufficient adaptive reuse of the property that allows the preservation of the historic assets in a manner that is compatible with or minimizes the impact on the neighborhoods. I would submit, based upon the testimony you have received, it does. That's not to say that many of these people's concerns are unfounded or aren't realistic. Of course they're realistic, and of course they're legitimate to them. But I think the nature of the activity on the site, the nature of the restrictions inherent in the PD that's being sought are going to limit the adverse impacts as much as possible, and I think would mitigate and avoid the sorts of concerns that many of the people have articulated. And I think it will also preserve that architectural and historic asset. And I think that it will be something, as you heard from many people say tonight, something the city would be proud of and something that Mr. Casper will be an excellent steward of. So I would suggest, in light of all the actual substantial competent evidence and expert testimony, that we recommend you vote approval. Truett has a couple points to address.
Truett Gardner, 400 North Ashley. Again, with all the comments from the neighbors on Coachman, Aileen, Asbury, all the streets that spoke in opposition, I want to let you know that I've been the one that's been living this, breathing this for the last 9 months, and their concerns were definitely not ignored. When you look at your site plan, a lot of those are specific to those streets. And then when we finally negotiated and came to agreement, we went to the city attorney's office, to the staff, and they felt like some of those were not appropriate to be on the site plan. So what did Blake do? He said, well, how else could we do this? And so we came up with the idea, again, it's in your binder, of a declaration of restrictive covenants. It's been presented to the Bayshore Beautiful Neighborhood Association. It is binding on the property in perpetuity. If we violate any of those, they can sue, get an injunction, and force us to do it. And specifically, and I felt the passion of Mr. Kumaji, and I appreciate that. But I wanted to just draw your attention to two. These are the big quality of life issues. This is the second page of the restrictive covenants. It's B, C. Cut through traffic through the surrounding local streets, Villa Rosa, Bayshore Court, Coachman Avenue, Aileen, and Asbury, shall be prohibited. Motion-activated cameras shall be installed at the corner points of the property on Bayshore Boulevard to enforce such restrictions. Further, members and/or drivers, limo, car service, Uber, etc., shall be instructed to use Gandy Boulevard, El Prado, and/or Euclid Avenue as east-west cross streets. Second, another quality of life issue is noise. We restricted the hours. We did everything we could. We had another condition with the residents that we had agreed to that, again, the city wasn't comfortable imposing. So Blake did two things. One, he engaged a sound consultant to come out when he was having a corporate function at the house, very much exactly like what he plans on for the Stovall Estate when it's operational, and had them conduct a search at the property line. What they determined, and they did it baseline before the event, baseline during the event, is that we were at 60 decibel levels, which is a conversation tone. And the city wasn't comfortable with that. So again, in the restrictive covenant, item C, noise, except as expressly set forth in the following sentence, no sound shall be generated from the property in excess of 60 decibels as measured from the perimeter of the boundaries of the property. On no more than 4 occasions per year, and with advance notice provided to the association, sound emanating from the property can be generated at higher levels in accordance with applicable City of Tampa noise ordinances. And I only say that to close because we did everything in our powers, both within the bounds of the site plan, and this is the only time I've seen somebody go even beyond that. And that speaks to what this project has been about. That speaks to Blake, and we'd ask for your approval. Thank you.
All right, are there any questions from council to any of the participants before we close the public hearing?
I'm going to ask some questions to staff.
All right. Mr. Cohen.
I just want to make a couple of statements. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Council, may I be heard since Mr. Gardner mentioned my...
No, sir, you through for tonight.
Okay, well, he mentioned my name in his rebuttal.
No,
Okay.
this is not a court of law.
Okay, that's too bad.
I just want to say this, that most people here have been here. When I came in at 5:30, most of you were already here. And we really appreciate your attendance. And what I'm about to say is that most of you live in the neighborhood. Now, you wouldn't be here. And what I want you to leave with, if you're going to hate somebody, hate me. Don't hate yourself and don't hate your neighbor. Most of you are going to be, some of you are going to be happy, some of you are not going to be happy. Well, no matter how the vote comes out. But I want you to consider yourself a neighbor to whoever is against what your ideal is on this issue. You live there, you live together, you have kids. I want you to be friendly with each other. That's all I'm going to say. What I've got to decide here is who's right and who's wrong, and not based on who I like or who I dislike. It's what I've heard today and what the intentions are of this property. And those are the things that I got elected to do, like my other colleagues on this board. But profoundly is, you are yourself. Your neighbor are themselves. They're entitled to their opinion, just like you're entitled to yours. And I'm not trying to preach to you, because Heavenly knows I'm not a preacher. But I want you to be friends with each other and live a good life. And Mr. Chairman, there's so many other things that we could go into, but before we close, I just got to say a couple of things. Property values. I've heard that 3 or 4 times today. No matter what you think of this site, if it goes or it doesn't go, if it's approved or it's not approved, no property value is going to decrease, and let me tell you why. By all statistics that I work on water, this area is going to grow by 40% in the next 20 to 25 years. You think you're going to have 40% more dwellings? You're going to have more people living here than you have dwellings for them to live in. You think the property value is going to go down? I think that answers itself. For or against, doesn't matter. Let's knock that out. This zoning is not about who the person is. It's not about the wealth or not the wealth. It's not about lawyers, for side or the other side. It's not about the character of one side or the other side. It's not about the integrity of you or them, all of you together. It is not about personalities. It is not who is successful, who's not so successful. It's not about the haves or the haves not. It's about a piece of property. And keep that in mind about when you say, I want you to be friendly. It's about a piece of property. Nothing above counts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Ms. Cohen?
I have a couple of questions I want to ask of the staff about some of the testimony that was given tonight, just so we can clarify some of the parameters of what it is we're considering and actually get to the bottom of what the actual facts are related to some of these issues. And I'm looking, I believe, for Ms. Feely and Ms. Kirk. First of all, at the top of the applicant's list related to the request from the neighborhood and the actions that have been taken is the question, can you limit delivery trucks from using the neighborhood streets? And the applicant it says, and I'm going to quote here, delivery trucks are prohibited from using local streets, must use Bayshore to enter and exit Stovall House. Only box trucks and delivery vans are permitted to service the property. There's been a lot of testimony tonight that there's going to be commercial traffic, a plethora of commercial traffic on the residential streets. I remember early in the presentation, Ms. Feely, you saying the deliveries would be made on Bay Shore. So which is it? How is this going to work? We know there are no trucks allowed on Bay Shore, but I remember when I used to live on Bay Shore that if you had to have a delivery and that was the way in, the trucks would come on the Bay Shore way.
Abby Feely, Land Development Coordination. Jonathan Scott from Transportation is here, and he does have that mapped out to show you as to what the truck route situation would be. There are commitments and conditions as to the type when the deliveries would be on the site plan, and they would be through the Bay Shore entrance, because I believe, based on the conditions on the plan, that the intent is not to have Cisco type trucks that are delivering here. That being said, I think everyone in residential neighborhoods gets deliveries and other things that occur there, and they also are getting them from people coming off of the truck route, because they're not on the truck route either. So let me let Jonathan show you what the route for those deliveries of people coming.
Okay, and then we'll get to the other questions. And there's just a few.
Good evening or good morning. It's Jonathan Scott, Transportation Planning. I've got the truck map here. So you can see here's Gandy, and it would go onto McDill. The closest kind of like cutover would be off of Coachman. But the entrance is going to be on Bayshore, so it'd almost be easier, in my opinion, just to come right off of Gandy onto Bayshore, right onto, it's less obtrusive into the neighborhood. Because the code speaks in terms of the truck. Let's see, truck may travel over along a street not designated as a truck route, only as necessary where to go. It's business. So that's what we have here. Is there any questions?
I don't understand your answer. Explain to me what would be the way that you would foresee that deliveries would be made?
I'd foresee them coming off of right to Gandy and then right to Bayshore, because the entrance is going to be on Bayshore for the truck.
And is it correct that for a limited distance, delivery vehicles are allowed to use Bayshore to get to the entrance they're trying to access?
That's how I interpret the code, and that's pretty much, I think, how everybody else is interpreting it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
There was an issue brought up by Mr. Grandoff related to, and I'm using his words here, the incompetent site plan because of the front yard setback issue on Coachman. My reading of the staff report is that he would be correct if this were not a PD. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct.
So because it's a PD, we can waive those, or adjust those setbacks depending on the specificity of the site plan, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There was also the issue brought up by someone of the word wasn't used, but it was implied that the putting into the sidewalk was incompetent because it didn't have the 2 feet of buffer from Bayshore. What is the story with that?
Abby Feely, Land Development Coordination. That's a 4-foot sidewalk. When it's a 4-foot sidewalk, the 2-foot recovery is not required. The city installed that, and the sidewalk was installed to code.
Okay, and the city did install it, didn't they? Mm-hmm. So if it were wrong, it would not. That's whose fault it would be. Okay. There was some question raised about the time of operations and the time of alcohol sales, and I understand in the application it says that the application is for consistency with Chapter 14, which would allow it to alcohol till 3 o'clock in the morning. The site plan says something different. So can you clarify for me which controls and what exactly are the alcohol parameters that are being asked for here?
I cannot, but I can have Ryan do that for you, because Ryan is the one processing the alcohol.
Ryan Manassi, Land Development. The extra hours that you're seeing on the site plan are more strict for his outdoor alcohol sales. I believe the applicant did that to accommodate the neighborhood, and they did state the consistency or the hours of operation to be pursuant to Chapter 14 as well.
But the outdoor, if I remember correctly, the outdoor alcohol sales would be till 10 p.m. on weeknights and Sunday and until midnight on Friday and Saturday. Is that correct?
10 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, and 12 a.m. Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
Friday, Saturday, I'm sorry.
And then
Captain.
finally, this question is for Ms. Kurt. The issue of, there was a lot of discussion in the public comment about fear of driving under the influence, of people leaving the venue after they've been drinking. I wonder if you could give us some guidance as to whether or not that can be part of our consideration.
I'm going to let Ms. Mora answer that because she's standing here and it's an alcohol question, but I'm available for anything else.
Kristen Mora, Legal Department. Yes, you are not allowed to assume that people are going to act illegally, so you cannot base a denial of this on a fear that someone will become intoxicated and then drive. So that can't be part of your consideration. You have to assume that people will act legally and within the bounds of the law.
Does that extend to the noise ordinance as well?
Yes.
So our assumption for the purposes of evaluating this application, we can't assume that the noise ordinance is going to be violated.
Correct.
But we could ask this question, and maybe Ms. Feely, and this is my last question, Ms. Feely could answer this. On the noise issue, we deal with buffering all the time here. We attempt all the time when we are dealing with land use issues, particularly when intense uses are rubbing up against neighborhoods. We struggle with how to buffer so that those uses are as not intrusive as possible. And I wondered if you could just give an opinion on the amount of landscaping buffering this property and how effective you think it will be. I know that the main waiver tonight has to do with the fence height. So if you could just talk about whether or not, in your professional opinion, you think the buffering is reasonable, it's not enough, it's plenty. It would, I think, be helpful because of so many of the questions that were raised, not just about noise, but, you know, parking lights, and I heard about beeping of car keys and the different things that people might hear if they're in close proximity to a parking lot.
Sure. Abby Feely, Land Development Coordination. I'm just looking for one other photo that I had from the site. The wall along Coachman, I mean, I don't want it to come across. There's been extensive conversations in our office amongst Gloria, myself, Brian, in the processing of both of these applications and ensuring that all the code requirements were reviewed and that we looked at the existing conditions of the property in relation to that. I'm looking for the wall along Coachman. I have the gate out, which raised the question. I actually found an old BOA Rolodex card where there was a request for a variance along that north side to be able to put in that bigger wall. So I was asking Gloria how that came about when I put the report together to add that waiver in, because it would technically today be in the front yard that's come up for discussion tonight. And because it was constructed far before that provision saying that those adjacent yards for lots adjacent to Bayshore have two fronts, it was treated as a corner yard, and that corner yard was buffered as it would have been allowed to be buffered with a 6-foot high wall. So you have 6-foot high wall with very thick landscaping, and you also have the 7-foot caps that rise above that portion, creating down Coachman a pretty substantial buffer, a buffer that's shown to remain all along that side. And I know there's still another one. The other issue was along Bayshore, You can't even see the property or where it's going to be occurring. A lot of times what comes before this council are vehicle use area buffers, a reduction from the vehicle use area to the street or from the vehicle use area to adjacent property. This doesn't have that. You also see use-to-use buffer reduction. We don't have that. I think that along the south, it's the 25-foot. I'm assuming that it's going to have additional plantings that would be in that area. They have some additional screening that's also in that area. In our code, the most stringent is a concrete masonry wall with a distance of 15 feet. That is for commercial directly adjacent to residential. This buffering on this property exceeds what the minimum required in the city code is, whether on this property or next to Palmacia or behind Miguel's off of Kennedy where there are residences. The buffering exceeds what our code requires and is not asking for any alternative material. So I feel that that would be adequate.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know those people.
Stop. Dennis, stop.
All right, let me say this, to the audience. You had your opportunity to talk, now it's our time to talk. All right, so you're gonna respect that. All right, any other further comments or questions from council?
I want to follow up with something, Mr. Scott, if you come on up real quick. You know, something was said during public comment about, bless you, about the, bless you too, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you.
About the weight of the vehicles. I mean, is there a restriction in the code about the gross vehicle weight of the particular vehicle that does deliveries? Because typically that's how you measure whether or not a semi-truck is going to come through or a box truck or anything else. Is there any restriction in the code specific to the weight?
It doesn't specify, but it does reference it that it's not allowed to go over the maximum weights for the roads travel. They can't exceed any other laws or regulations.
Right, because a box truck might be, you know, it's usually 1,000 gross vehicle weight typically. It doesn't usually go more than that. For the
Right,
most
it won't be
part,
able to,
if I'm correct.
to violate anything else like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Certainly.
so, thank you, appreciate it. And then I have, Mr. Gardner, I've got a question for you, too. You know, how many members do you think that this you know, club is going to have? I mean, is there a limit? Is there a number? Is there something out there?
So that is Mr. Suarez, that's a great question that we've been asked a lot, and I will try to give the answer that Blake gives.
Okay.
He could probably give a better answer than me. But the way to do that is we have 80 parking spaces, 18,000 square feet. He wants a membership that will be able to enjoy the property in a peaceful way, not be crammed together like it's some crazy party. And so with that comes, what is that membership number? And there is going to be local members, there's going to be out-of-town members. A local member is going to use it more than an out-of-town member.
Right.
But what he knows from an operational standpoint, which is his expertise, of what will fit and what will feel good and what will make this successful. And he doesn't want to exceed that. He could probably give a more detailed answer than me on that. There's not, I wish I could give you a direct answer of it's this.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a learning curve. I guess my guess is he will ramp that membership up gently as it goes, find out what that mix of in-town and out-of-town is.
Right.
And so the club is successful.
Will there be events that the public can use the facility?
So funny you should mention that as well. In the conversations we had with the neighborhood association, the issue of exclusivity was brought up. What was interesting, somebody in those discussions said there's nothing more exclusive than a single family home. And so this is already an opening up. But the offer that Blake has made, and he can get up here and make it again if you'd like him to, is as it relates to the Bayshore Beautiful Neighborhood Association, he would like for them to host their meetings on a periodic basis at the house. He's also thinking of events that would open it up to the public at large. obviously, it's the members and whose initiation fees and dues are going to keep the lights on. But he definitely intends to open this up.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
All right, any further questions from council to any member of the team? All right, hearing none. Get a motion closed. All right, got a motion from Mr. Maniscalco, second by Mr. Miranda, to close this public hearing. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we can take up item number 6 first. What the pleasure of council?
I think I was next.
Okay.
All right, this is the rezoning, not the alcohol, correct?
Correct.
Number 6. I move an ordinance being presented for first reading consideration, an ordinance rezoning property in the general vicinity of 4621 Bayshore Boulevard in the city of Tampa, Florida, and more particularly described in section 1 from zoning district classification RS 150 residential single family to PD plan development, private recreational facility, bed and breakfast, residential, single family detached, providing an effective date.
All right, we got a motion from Mr. Corn, second by Mr. Vieira. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Let's do a roll call vote.
The motion carried with,
Do a roll call.
well, let's do a roll call vote then. Roll call vote, Suarez, Cohen,
Yes.
Maniscalco,
Yes.
Reddick,
Yes.
Miranda, and Vieira. The motion carried with Suarez and Miranda voting no and Capeen being absent. Second reading and adoption will be on September 21st.
Okay. Then we go to number 5.
Did you say
September 20th at 9:30 a.m. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then we go to item number 5. Anybody pleasure to anyone like to take up item number 5? Mr. Bear?
I move an ordinance being presented for first reading consideration, an ordinance approving a special use permit S2 for alcoholic beverage sales, large venue consumption on premises only, and making lawful the sale of beverages, regardless of alcoholic content, beer, wine, and liquor on that certain lot, plot, or tract of land located at 4621 Bayshore Boulevard, Tampa, Florida, is more particularly described in Section 2, that all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict are repealed, providing an effective date.
Second. All right, got a motion by Mr. Vieira, second by Mr. Maniscalco. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay.
The motion carried with Suarez and Miranda voting no and Capeen being absent. Second reading and adoption will be on September 20th, 2018 at 9:30 a.m.
All right, we go to new business. Mr. Suarez.
It's 1 a.m. Let's go get breakfast.
All right, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Cohen.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Maniscalco. No. Mr. Miranda. All right, Mr. Charlie, what we got next? All right. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
The motion to receive and file was by whom?
Second by Maniscalco.